Chapter 1029. Squeak. A sound rang out. It wasn't Bufong who opened the door. Instead, it was Xiao Bai, whose mechanical eyes sparkled. Troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others. Xiao Bai said mechanically, his chubby body blocking the door, looking down from above. However, after it finished speaking, Xiao Bai stood at his spot, not moving. He raised his fan-like palm, scratching his round head. Xiao Bai lowered his head, looking at a pair of big, watery eyes. At this moment, his big eyes were filled with tears, like a flood. It seemed he was frightened by Xiao Bai's words. At the moment when a lightning arc flashed in Xiao Bai's eyes, Cece's mouth trembled, bursting into tears. Xiao Bai looked at Cece with a dumbfounded face. Cece cried so hard that her tears and snot flowed together. Xiao Bai recognized Cece. As Bufong's new apprentice, Xiao Bai was naturally familiar with her. Perhaps it was because he had swallowed a lot of lightning. Xiao Bai had evolved to this stage, and he had developed a little intelligence. However, even with his intelligence, he couldn't understand the situation at this moment. Next to Cece, there were two figures. They lifted their hoods, revealing their faces. These were two exhausted faces. They seemed to have heard the crying. Bufong slowly walked down from the upper floor. Bufong, who was wearing pajamas, had his hair spread out. The front of his shirt was slightly open, revealing some of his fair skin. He looked a little lazy. Hearing Cece's crying, Bufong walked over. "What's going on?" Bufong walked to the door, yawning as he asked suspiciously. Xiao Bai's fan-like palm scratched his head. Then he turned his body, revealing Cece, who was sitting on the ground and crying. Cece? Bufong frowned and glanced at Cece. Cece stopped crying as if she had met an acquaintance. But she had already cried like a Hua cat, her face full of tears. She sobbed and looked at Bufong. Bufong walked in front of Cece and conjured a chili strip out of thin air, handing it to Cece. "Eat the spicy strip to calm down. Don't cry." Bufong comforted him a little stiffly. Holding the spicy strip in her hands, Cece stopped crying. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered as he walked to Cece's side. He reached out his fan-like hand and scooped up Cece, then placed her on his head. Cece was originally a child, so she felt that this was fun. While holding the spicy strip, she smiled through her tears and played happily with Xiao Bai. At this time, Bufong looked at the other two. Mu Luer and Mu Shou both revealed exhausted expressions. "I'm sorry, Owner Bu. It's already so late, but I still came to find you." Bufong clasped his hands behind his back as he walked into the restaurant. "Come in first." Mu Luer and Mu Shou looked at each other, then stepped into the restaurant. With a bang, the restaurant's door slammed shut. Swish! The sound of tea being poured rang out. The lights flickered. Dense steam rose up, and under the reflection of the lights, it seemed to bloom with 5 colors. Bufong poured the hot tea and handed it to Mu Luer and Mu Shou. "Drink it. I picked these tea leaves myself," Bufong said. Mu Luer held the teacup with both hands, covering it with both hands. The teacup emitted heat, causing Mu Luer's ice-cold heart to gradually warm up. A little bit of warmth was emitted from the teacup. The rich fragrance of the tea calmed her restless heart. This was the charm of the Heaven Chief restaurant. It always calmed people's hearts. She took a sip of the tea. The bitter taste of the tea flowed down her throat and into her stomach. After the bitterness, there was a refreshing sweetness. "Tell me, what happened?" Bufong looked at Mu Luer, asking suspiciously. Mu Luer shook her head bitterly. Everything that had happened today had left her in a state of shock. "My father is dead. The Mu family is gone. The city lord has changed," Mu Luer said. As she said these words, Mu Luer's voice trembled. Bufong was slightly stunned. Today, the Tong family, the Zhang family, and the other family heads cooperated with the 6-star Beast Emperor and that Captain Shui, who should have left to beat my father to death, Mu Luer said, her body slightly trembling. She did not think that Tong Wudi would have such big guts. Her father was the Immortal City's city lord. He had been personally confirmed by the Realm Lord. She had never thought that these people would dare to make a move. Were they not afraid of the Realm Lord blaming them? However, She knew that this was all planned by Tong Wudi. With the involvement of the six-star Beast Emperor, Tong Wudi and the others could say that her father had died together with the Beast Emperor to kill it. Bufang looked at the sad Mu Luer, not knowing what to say. My condolences. The dead cannot come back to life. Bufang thought for a moment, then said. He did not know how to comfort people, so he could only say this. I know. I came here today to ask Owner Bu to take care of Cece. Mu Luer drank a mouthful of hot tea, her mood calming down a lot. Bufang looked at Xiao Bai, who was happily playing with Cece, and nodded. As his apprentice chef, Cece, of course, he had to take care of her. Sure, the Mu residence is gone. I will leave Cece to Owner Bu. I want to take revenge. Mu Luer said. Sister Luer, I will go with you. Mu Shou said calmly. No, you stay here with Owner Bu and protect Cece. You two are the future hope of the Mu residence. As long as you two become powerful Heaven Chief, the Mu residence will have a chance to rise again, Mu Luer said. No, Sister Luer, I want to go with everyone to the second floor. Mu Shou suddenly choked with sobs, tears welling up in his eyes. You can't go. I don't know if I can survive if I go to the second floor. I don't know if there will be any changes in the Mu residence's stronghold on the second floor. I don't dare to gamble, so I have to leave hope for the Mu family. Mu Luer said. After a long time, Mu Luer left, leaving only Mu Shou and Mu Cece. Bufang sighed. Looking at Mu Luer's departing figure, his mood became a little complicated. The river flows east for 30 years, and the river flows west for 30 years. You two can do it. I believe in you. Bufang rubbed Mu Shou's head and said. Mu Shou and Mu Cece settled in the store. Mu Cece became an apprentice chef, while Mu Shou replaced the Black Dragon King's unreliable waiter identity and became the new waiter of the Heaven Chief restaurant. The next day, the Tong family brought a large group of people to the Heaven Chief team, wanting to capture Mu Cece and Mu Shou. However, the relationship between Xiao Bai and Mu Cece was better than Bufang had expected. Xiao Bai, who was protective of his children, didn't even say anything about stripping the troublemakers as an example to others and directly started to beat them up. The Tong family's people were beaten black and blue, and their clothes were stripped off. One by one, they were thrown into the downtown area. Only then did the Tong family not dare to come to the store again. It was as if the Mu family had evaporated from the first floor of the Heaven Chief world. Other than Mu Cece and Mu Shou, who stayed in the store, everyone else had left. The entire Mu family had disappeared in one night. Bufang had been to the Mu residence. However, that place had already turned into ruins. It had been burned by immortal flames, and there was still smoke rising. Sighing, Bufang returned to the Heaven Chief restaurant, and the Heaven Chief competition was finally about to begin. Right now, the city lord of the first floor of the Heaven Chief world was Tong Wudi, or rather, the acting city lord. After all, he hadn't received the approval of the realm lord. However, according to the procedure, it was only a matter of time. In the city lord's mansion, Tong Wudi sat on a high seat. He narrowed his eyes. Outside the city lord's mansion, in the square, the heads of the Heaven Chief teams were moving. Almost all the Heaven Chief world's first floor's Heaven Chief competition had gathered here. Today was the day of the Heaven Chief world's Youth Heaven Chief competition. And these Heaven Chief were all participants of the competition. Gongshu Ban, Gongshu Yun, and Xianyuan Xiaowei were among these Heaven Chief teams, waiting for the teleportation array to open. The Heaven Chief Youth Competition was a grand event of the entire Heaven Chief world. Naturally, it couldn't be held in the first floor of the Heaven Chief world. From the second floor to the fifth floor, there were different competitions. The second floor was where the first round of the Heaven Chief competition would be held, the preliminary round. All the Heaven Chief competitions participants would gather in the second floor of the Heaven Chief world. In the city lord's mansion, Tong Wudi slowly walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. Today, Tong Wudi's aura was even stronger. As the city lord, he naturally had the aura of a city lord. His eyes swept across the audience. Today is the day that everyone will participate in the Heaven Chief competition. You will represent the first floor of the Heaven Chief world. I hope that everyone can get a good ranking. Tong Woody didn't say much. From the previous competitions, the first floor of the Heaven Chief world was always at the bottom. After all, the resources were too little. His mobilization was just a routine. But at least it was a good opportunity for everyone to see the world. Of course, since the first floor was so big, there were many Heaven Chief geniuses. Gongshu Ban, Gongshu Yun, the two siblings, Xinyuan Xiaohui, the rising star, Tong Shui of the Tong family, and other Heaven Chief geniuses all had a high chance of entering the top 300 in the Heaven Chief competition. Gongshu Ban had a high chance of entering the top 200. As the city lord, Tong Woody would naturally give more encouragement to these geniuses. In the distance, an uproar resounded. Tong Woody's eyes narrowed. He looked from a distance. From there, a thin figure slowly walked over. He wore a red and white vermilion robe, and his hair was tied with a velvet rope. He looked very lazy. Bufong, Tong Woody muttered faintly. Gongshu Ban's eyes brightened. Many Heaven Chief gazed at Bufong with bright eyes. This mortal Heaven Chief from the lower realm had brought them so many miracles. They didn't know how far this mortal chef could go in this Heaven Chief competition. As of now, Bufong's name was like thunder piercing the ears of the first layer. The immortal chefs couldn't help but make way for him. Behind Bufong, there were two figures. One was Xiao Bai's chubby figure, who was holding the hand of a petite little girl. Tong Woody's eyes fell on the little girl's eyes. Instantly, a radiance burst out from his eyes. The remnants of the Mu family? Tong Woody exhaled. His eyes gradually became sharp as he stared at Bufong. However, Bufong just looked at him indifferently, without a trace of fear. Unauthorized people aren't allowed to enter the formation. Tong Woody said casually. One is my Earth Immortal puppet, and the other is my apprentice chef. They're not unauthorized people. Bufong said seriously. Apprentice chefs were allowed to join the Heaven Chief competition. They could learn cooking skills and see the world. Apprentice chef? Tong Woody gazed at Bufong, his face cold. After a while, the corners of his mouth rose, revealing a faint smile. All right, if that's the case, it's up to you. I hope Honorbu's trip will be smooth. He can bring hope to the first layer of the Heaven Chief realm. Tong Woody said. His smile was a little cold, and his eyes were a little strange. Bufong nodded. He didn't have a good impression of Tong Woody. Tong Woody grinned, looking at Bufong coldly. He was already a city lord. As long as the realm lord gave the order, he would have the chance to join the other city lords to expel the black dog from Bufong's restaurant. At that time, without the black dog's protection, he could do whatever he wanted to Bufong. Previously, the 5 city lords of the immortal cities could join forces to expel the black dog from the Heaven Chief realm. Now, they could do it too. That was why Tong Woody looked at Bufong coldly. The conflict between Bufong and the Tong family meant that Tong Woody would not let Bufong go. Next, we'll open the teleportation formation. I hope you can get a good ranking in the Heaven Chief competition. Bring honor to the first layer of the Heaven Chief realm. Tong Woody said loudly on the high platform. The Heaven Chief's blood was boiling. They all shouted. A moment later, Tong Woody's hand bloomed with 7-colored light. He pressed it on a stone platform in front of the high platform. As a loud noise echoed. The huge teleportation formation shrouded the crowd of Heaven Chief. 7-colored light burst out. A 7-colored beam of light suddenly shot up into the sky and charged straight into the vault of heaven. The immortal chefs standing in the formation cried out in alarm. Then they found that their bodies began to rise slowly. Their speed became faster and faster. In just a blink of an eye, they followed the 7-colored beam of light and rushed into the sky. Heaven Chief Restaurant Lord Dog looked at the beam of light that soared into the sky and yawned. Heaven Chief Competition. TSK, TSK. I really hope that Bufong boy can enter the space of the Heaven Tree. Then, Lord Go can meet his old friend. Lord Go snorted. Then he stuck out his tongue and licked his lips as if he was recalling something. Chapter 10:30. The 7-colored light beam shot up into the sky. In an instant, it filled the void. Swish! Bu Fong stood in the teleportation formation, looking out of the seven-colored light beam. He saw the constantly changing scenery around him. Those were the leaves of the so-called heaven tree. The heaven tree was huge, and its leaves were of different sizes. Some were young shoots, and some were old leaves. These trees also bore fruits that were surrounded by immortal energy. Owner Bu, is this the first time you've seen this? It was unknown when Gongshu Ban and the others had come to Bu Fong's side. They had a good relationship with Bu Fong. Are these the immortal fruits on the heaven tree? Bu Fong asked. That's right. The heaven tree is the existence that supports the entire heaven chief realm. The immortal fruits can bear all kinds of immortal materials, immortal tools, and even immortal flames. Gongshu Ban said, looking at the fruits with immortal energy twirling around them. They can bear immortal flames? Bu Fong was a little surprised. Weren't trees afraid of fire? Wouldn't they be burned by immortal flames? Of course. The heaven tree has existed for tens of thousands of years. Father used to tell me. The heaven tree is actually the manifestation of the great path's will of the heaven chief realm, Gongshu Ban said, the corner of his mouth twitching. The manifestation of the great path's will. Bu Fong was bewildered. Then he sucked in a breath of cold air. Realm Lord Did had always said that the Lord Go had bitten the great path. Bu Fong still wondered how the great path, an illusory thing, could be bitten. Could it be that the Lord Go had eaten the heaven tree? Or was it the origin of the heaven tree? That was interesting. It's a pity that we don't have enough resources on the first level. The immortal ingredients produced by the heaven tree are of the lowest grade, so it's very difficult for us to nurture a powerful heaven chief. However, the quality of the immortal fruits in the second, third, and fourth levels are about the same. Although there are differences, the differences are still acceptable. However, the fifth level is located at the top of the heaven tree. It's the most essential part of the heaven tree, Gongshu Ban said. The heaven chief, nurtured by that level, are all very powerful. The rainbow light continued to soar into the sky. Suddenly, he rushed out of the ever-changing group of leaves and arrived at a new layer. Walala! Some leaves were falling in the air. The speed of the teleportation array also became slower and slower. Finally, it came to a stop. We're here, Gongshu Ban said. A group of people walked out of the teleportation array one after another. The air was filled with a fragrant aroma. Bu Fong followed the crowd and walked out. He stood in place and looked up at the sky. He immediately saw the dense leaves in the sky. Those leaves rustled in the sky. As they swayed, there seemed to be an endless sound. Is this the second level of Heaven Chief World? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. His gaze landed on the leaves. Among them, there were fruits that were blooming with brilliance and surrounded by immortal energy. See, this is the difference between the first and second levels. Gongshu Ban said, looking at those immortal fruits with envy. For the first level, it's really unfair, Bu Fong said. Gongshu Ban smiled and walked forward. The group of people immediately walked out of the teleportation array. Outside, the noise resounded incessantly. The heaven chief of the first level gathered in front of an open space. In the distance was the majestic gate of the immortal city. The gate of the second level of Heaven Chief World was much more majestic than the first level. After all, in the second level of Heaven Chief World, the Heaven Chief obtained more resources. However, the beasts also obtained a lot of resources, and their strength would also increase. Facing these beasts, the immortal city also had to pay a price. In the distance, a group of guards wearing armor stood solemnly. Their faces were solemn, emotionlessly looking at the Heaven Chief of the first level. In front of those guards were experts wearing chef robes. Friends from the first level of Heaven Chief, I'm Xiao Buke from the Xiao family in Immortal City. I'm in charge of managing the order of the Heaven Chief of the first level in the second level. The leader was a gentle young man with green hair. His voice was gentle and magnetic. Everyone, remember that the Heaven Chief of the Heaven Chief World has gathered in the second level to participate in the preliminaries of the Youth Heaven Chief competition. So, remember, don't cause trouble. Otherwise, if you get killed, I won't be responsible. Xiao Bu smiled and said. However, his words made the smiles on the faces of the Heaven Chief of the first level vanish. After all, the friend from the first level are a little weak. Uproar. The Heaven Chief of the first level was in an uproar. Their faces were filled with righteous indignation. However, Xiao Bu just smiled warmly. His warm smile was filled with intense disdain. To the Heaven Chief of the second level, the Heaven Chief of the first level were just trash. A bunch of cannon fodder for the Heaven Chief competition. After talking for a while, they entered the Immortal City. Today, as they walked around the Immortal City, they could see the Heaven Chief in chef robes everywhere. Not long after, they arrived at the residence of the Heaven Chief of the first level. Outside, Gongshu Ban forced a smile. The Heaven Chief of the second level didn't put them in their eyes at all. If he wasn't wrong, among the 5 layers of the Heaven Chief world, only the Heaven Chief of the first level was arranged to live in the outer area. The other Heaven Chief also thought of that, so they all expressed their indignation. However, they had no choice. Xiao Bu didn't care about the people who were protesting. After giving each of them a jade talisman, he left. What's this jade talisman? Bufang asked suspiciously. This is our ID card. Use your mental force to activate it. You can see the competition information and other information, said Gongshu Ban. Bufang was a little surprised. Then he guided a wisp of mental force from his spirit sea, pouring it into the jade talisman. That jade talisman flashed with radiance. Contestant number 18927, Bufang. Origin, Heaven Chief World's first level. Heaven Chief level, Immortal Chef. Bufang saw his own information. There was also a lot of information about the preliminary competition. Among them, Bufang also saw the other information that Gongshu Ban had mentioned. Talent list. Bufang was skeptical. Gongshu Ban saw Bufang's puzzled face, and he couldn't help but smile. Owner Bu, this talent list is the preliminary ranking of the Heaven Chief competition. It's based on all the young geniuses in the Heaven Chief world. You can see many monstrous geniuses in the list, said Gongshu Ban. The talent list has a total of 100 people. It's a very authoritative ranking. It's based on cultivation base, immortal flame, immortal tool, expert cooking skills, and other aspects. Gongshu Ban said, what you see now is the final ranking of the Immortal Chef Tournament. Interesting. Bufang looked at the ranking, the corners of his mouth twitching. Gongshu Ban didn't seem to understand Bufang's strange expression. With a move of his mind sank into the list and looked at the rankings. Then, his face became extremely strange. He looked at Bufang as if he was looking at a monster. Owner Bu, when did you get on the talent list? You're even ranked 100. Gongshu Ban said. That's right, the 100 on the talent list, Bufang. He came from the first layer of the Heaven Chief world. At this moment, all the Heaven Chief World chefs who had received their jade talismans were in an uproar when they saw this strange name on the talent list. Since when could a chef from the first layer of the Heaven Chief World get on the talent list? Gongshu Ban rubbed the space between his brows. Apparently, he didn't expect it either. From a distance, Xin Yuan Xiaohui and Gongshu Yun also walked over, looking at Bufang with a strange expression. Owner Bu, you quietly got on the talent list? Gongshu Yun said with a strange face. I'm afraid your future won't be so good. Why do you say that? Bufang asked skeptically. Wasn't it good to get on the talent list? How awesome. Although Bufang had always been a low-key person, he wasn't used to this kind of high profile. 100. TSK, TSK, TSK. This position is really awkward. Gongshu Ban said. He glanced at Bufang, then continued. The last rank is a very conspicuous position. Apparently, many people want this position. The 5th layer, the 4th layer, the 3rd layer, the 2nd layer. Basically, they won't allow a Heaven Chief from the 1st layer to occupy this precious position. Thus, in the following days, I'm afraid Owner Bu will encounter all kinds of challenges. Challenges? Bufang was skeptical. Let's put it this way. Gongshu Yun directly interrupted Gongshu Ban, looking at Bufang. I'm sure someone wants to mess with you. making you the target of everyone. What? Who wants to mess with me? Bufong was bewildered. It was the first time he came to the second layer of the Heaven Chief world. Who would be so bored to mess with a low-key chef like him? I don't know who wants to mess with you, but I'm sure they don't have good intentions. Getting on the talent list can increase your fame. Many people want to have this fame, said Gong Shuyun. You tell me, if a Heaven Chief from the first layer holds this position that doesn't match his strength, what will happen? At this moment, Bufong finally understood. There would be countless people who coveted this position. Would they come and challenge him? They wanted to make him restless in this preliminary round, and even make him a laughingstock. Just a small matter. Don't worry about it. However, Bufong just waved his hand, faintly smirking as if he didn't care. Gong Shuban and the others looked at Bufong begrudgingly. Bufong still didn't understand the stakes. Challenging me? They will soon understand what a stupid decision this is, Bufong said, rubbing Cece's head, who was standing next to him. Gong Shuban and the others couldn't do anything but return to their rooms. At the same time, the entire Heaven Chief world was in an uproar. Everyone on the talent list had seen it. The 99th place wasn't out of their expectation, but what was the 100th place? Where did the Heaven Chief from the first layer come from? What qualifications did he have to occupy the 100th place? The Heaven Chief of the first layer also had a chance to enter the talent list. The Heaven Chief of the first layer, whose best result was around 150, could also enter the talent list. Who was the one who ranked this year's genius ranking? Was this a joke? Xiao Manch and Xiao Buchuan looked at his big brother Xiao Buke, who had just returned from a distance. Thank you, big brother. Xiao Buchuan looked at Xiao Buke. Xiao Buke still had a gentle smile on his face. Buchuan, you want to completely destroy that Heaven Chief of the first layer. What kind of grudge do you have against him? Do you have to make him hate you? Xiao Buke said, just a trash of the first layer. You want to make his mind collapse. Occupying a position that doesn't match his strength. I'm afraid that Chef's mind is already broken and incomparably restless, said Xiao Buke. I want him to be restless. Then, under the challenge of the Heaven Chief, he will be trampled by everyone. His mind will collapse, and he will be incomparably desperate. Xiao Buchuan grinned, his face cold. Every day, he will be laughed at by others. He will become the laughingstock of all the Heaven Chief. Tisk tsk. Really ruthless. Do you think it's easy for him to participate in the Heaven Chief competition? Xiao Buke said. Big brother, don't underestimate that chef. He can fight 1 against 5 and still win, said Xiao Buchuan. Oh, are they the 5 fellows who went to the first floor with you to discuss? Just the 5 of them. Your big brother can fight 1 against 5 with only one hand. The corners of Xiao Buke's mouth twitched, looking very disdainful. Anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing that guy become the laughingstock of everyone. Only then can I relieve the pain of being stripped. Xiao Buchuan's eyes were cold. Xiao Buke was bewildered. Strip? What strip? Is it the kind of stripping that I imagined? Big brother, you heard wrong. At the same time, everyone who saw the ranking was in an uproar. Then, they gathered in groups and rushed toward the residential area on the first floor. Instantly, the entrance of the outer residential area was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone was clamoring to challenge Bufong, who was ranked 100. And at this moment, Bufong, who had become the target of everyone, entered the heaven and earth farmland with the enhanced abyssal chili sauce he had exchanged from a system. Chapter 1031. Heaven and Earth Farmland. 2 wooden chairs were placed in front of the wooden house. 2 lazy figures were lying on the reclining chairs. Bufong leisurely reclined on the chair, feeling the warm breeze in the farmland. It was so gentle that it felt like a woman's hand was massaging his skin. When the wind blew on the vermilion robe and caused it to rub against his skin, the slight itch made him feel a little sleepy. The heaven and earth spirit energy in the farmland was really thick. Perhaps it was because of the growing number of spirit materials. Since Nyohan-san had nothing to do, the spirit fields had covered the entire farmland. In the pond, fishes and blood lobsters swam slowly. The pleasant and gentle water made the blood lobsters feel a little intoxicated. Brother Octopus relaxed its 8 claws in the pond. Those claws slightly swayed, looking like it was enjoying itself. Not far from them, 80 and the 8 Treasures Pig were galloping on the grassland, playing happily. The 3-eyed wild lion was lazily lying on the side, yawning from time to time. "Owner Boo, are you here for a vacation?" Neo-Han-san lazily asked while lying on the reclining chair. The Heaven and Earth farmland was indeed a good place for a vacation. The mountains were green, the water was clear, and the air was fresh. With no one to disturb him, it was really quiet and comfortable. Neo-Han-san liked this kind of peaceful life. Fighting and killing weren't his style. Of course not. I'm just here to think about a problem and to verify something. Bu Fong squinted, enjoying the gentle breeze as he spoke casually. Verify something? What's that? Old Bull will help you see. Bu Fong's words aroused Neo Hansen's interest. He rolled his eyes, asking. Bu Fong opened his eyes, turning his head to look at him. The corners of his mouth rose. "I've been waiting for you to say that." Bu Fong's strange expression made Neo Han-san a little bewildered a moment later. Neo Han-san saw a crystal jar in Bu Fong's hand. That thing looked so familiar. Neo Han-san squinted, looking at the crystal jar in Bu Fong's hand excitedly. He remembered that when Bu Fong cooked, he often added seasonings from the crystal jar. Could it be? "Owner Bu, no problem. This old bull is willing to sacrifice everything for your great dishes," Neo Han-san said solemnly. Bu Fong was bewildered. A moment later, he said faintly, "Really? Give me a piece of beef rib." Neo Han-san said, "Owner Bu, you will lose old bull if you do this." Of course, Bu Fong didn't want Neo Hansen's ribs. He was just joking. Standing up from the reclining chair, the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bu Fong's hand. The knife light flickered, and after a while, he set up the barbecue rack. A golden flame lotus flew out of Bu Fong's hand, falling on the grill. Neo Han-san looked at the scorching flame, his heart palpitating. He could feel that Owner Bu's cooking skills had improved again. However, Neo Han-san was more concerned about, was Owner Bu going to grill? It was so sweet. Sizzle. Bu Fong opened the lid of the crystal jar, taking out some of the improved abyssal chili sauce and smearing it on the grilled dishes. The steaming aroma soared up into the sky, along with a hint of spiciness. The spiciness of the improved abyssal chili sauce wasn't strong, but it could make people drown in it. Neo Han-san widened his nose, standing in front of the grill and sniffing. Saliva dripped from his mouth. Shortly after, Bu Fong finished grilling the dish. He handed it to Neo Han-san. "Have a taste. How does it taste? Compared to before, is there anything different?" Bu Fong said. Neo Han-san couldn't wait anymore. He took the skewer, flicked his tongue, and shoved all the meat into his mouth. In an instant, Neo Hansen's eyes bulged. He stared at Bu Fong for a moment. Then, his face turned red in just a blink of an eye. His mouth was about to spurt fire. This kind of melancholic spiciness. "What's going on?" Bu Fong walked out of the Heaven and Earth farmland. He was happily humming a tune. It seemed he was in a good mood. Returning to his room, Bu Fong played with the dragon bone kitchen knife. After practicing his cutting immortal style, he prepared to sleep. However, as soon as he laid down, someone knocked on the door. Opening the door, Gong Shu Ban and the others walked in with begrudging faces. "Owner Bu, you still have the mood to sleep." Gong Shu Ban looked at Bu Fong, who was wearing pajamas and was about to sleep. The corner of his mouth twitched. Owner Bu isn't panicking at all. If it was anyone else, they would have been scared out of their wits when they found out that they were ranked 100th on the genius ranking. Why not sleep? Bu Fong was puzzled. Gong Shu Ban didn't know what to say about Bu Fong's thick nerves. She dragged Bu Fong to the window of the room. Pushing open the window and looking down, he saw that the entrance of the tavern was surrounded by a large number of Heaven Chief. A terrifying aura emanated from these people, transforming into a terrifying aura. "These people are here for you, Owner Bu. They want to challenge you," Gong Shu Ban said. "Challenge me? It's so exciting. Anyway, why should I accept their challenge? Bufong glanced at Gong Ban. Gong Ban was dumbfounded. He didn't know how to answer Bufong's question. Go back, wash up, and sleep. There's a preliminary competition tomorrow, said Bufong. Gong Ban didn't know what to say. With a bewildered face, he was pushed out of the room by Bufong. Below, a group of Heaven Chief, who wanted to challenge Bufong, didn't see Bufong in the end. This made people feel a little sad. The next day, the Heaven Chief of the first layer went to the Heaven Tree Square in the inner circle. The preliminary competition would be held there. When the Heaven Chief of the first layer arrived, many Heaven Chief from the other layers looked at them with strange eyes. That gaze made the Heaven Chief of the first layer feel really uncomfortable. Bufong clasped his hands calmly. Xiaobai followed behind him, and Cici followed beside Xiaobai, looking at everything curiously. The first preliminary competition was divided into 10 groups. It would last for 5 days. After a cooking competition, the top 100 chefs from each group would enter the third layer semifinals. These groups were messed up. Each group had contestants from different layers. Bufong was assigned to the 10th group. When the contestants saw Bufong's name in their group, they all revealed a cold and excited smile. Bufong's name had spread throughout the Heaven Chief's circle even before the competition started. Everyone knew that a chef from the first layer had reached the 100th place on the talent list. Some people thought that it was a statistical error. Of course, some people thought that someone was purposely messing with Bufong. They wanted to make Bufong the target of public criticism, the target of everyone's trampling. After all, he was just a Heaven Chief from the first layer. What ability did he have to reach the 100th place on the talent list? What ability did he have to protect his ranking? However, it didn't matter to them. They only needed to know that if they could defeat Bufong, their names would resound throughout the Heaven Chief circle. No matter what, defeating a 100th Heaven Chief was a supreme honor. Gong Ban was assigned to the 6th group, and Xinyuan Xiao was assigned to the 9th group. At this moment, their faces were so solemn. They didn't want to be eliminated in the preliminary competition, so they had to treat this competition seriously. The Heaven Tree Square was really spacious, built around the Heaven Tree. The massive trunk of the Heaven Tree entered their eyes. The vein patterns on it were extremely obvious. Without a doubt, in this year's Heaven Chief competition, the most eye-catching event was Bufong's match. The arena of the 10th group was so crowded that not even a drop of water could pass through. Everyone wanted to see Bufong get trampled. Bufong was calm. Facing the crowd's gaze, he didn't panic at all. Within a few meters around him, there was no one. No one dared to come close to him. It's that kid's turn. He's finally here. The 100th place on the talent list. I'm so scared. Our group has a genius on the talent list. Why do I feel so excited? Seeing Bufong step on the arena, the surrounding people couldn't help but mock him. Of course, there were even more people whose eyes were burning with passion. If they could trample the 100th place on the talent list, their names would be known by everyone. If it was in the past, it would be impossible. But this time, the guy in the 100th place was actually the Heaven Chief from the first layer. As everyone knew, the Heaven Chief from the first layer was too weak to look at. Wearing the vermilion robe, Bufong slowly stepped on the arena. Each group had several arenas. The arena was the place for the competition. Moreover, there was a stove on the arena. However, the stove was not an immortal tool. It was just an ordinary stove. Normally, the Heaven Chief wouldn't choose to use the stove on the arena. Bufong's opponent was a Heaven Chief from the third layer. At this moment, the opponent's face was filled with ecstasy. He didn't expect that the first person to meet Bufong would be him. My luck is really good. As the first Heaven Chief to trample you, my name may be heard in this competition. The Heaven Chief grinned, squinting at Bufong. His eyes looked excited, as if he had found his prey. Congratulations. You're the first one to meet me. Bufong took out a velvet rope, unhurriedly tying his hair and folding the sleeves of his vermilion robe. Then, he looked at the Heaven Chief from the third layer and said casually. Bufong's calm attitude and tone bewildered the Heaven Chief. The latter squinted his eyes. Trash from the first layer. Now you're so arrogant? I hope you can still be that arrogant later. Please remember my name, Zhao Kuang-san. I'll be the first one to start your nightmare." Zhao Kuang-san grinned and said coldly. A wave of cheers resounded from the surroundings. Dong! A gong sounded. The referee in charge of this arena slowly appeared. He stood between the two of them and said a few things about the match. Then, he told them to start the cooking competition. The preliminaries had officially begun. Wait, all of a sudden, when Zhao Kuang-san turned around suddenly, Bu Fong called out to him. Zhao Kuang-san turned his head suspiciously, looking at Bu Fong. "Do you know about the chef's challenge?" Bu Fong asked. "Chef's challenge?" Zhao Kuang-san was bewildered. A moment later, Bu Fong turned to look at the arena, speaking casually. His voice wasn't loud, but it reverberated everywhere, making the Heaven Chief from Group 10 dumbstruck. "I heard that many people want to challenge me. Good. To not disappoint you, I'll use the chef's challenge in each of my matches. I hope you guys don't panic." Bu Fong said. "Chef's challenge?" Bu Fong's words made many people bewildered. In the crowd, Xiao Buchuan's face changed. Chef's challenge? Was that fellow crazy? Of course, he knew what a chef's challenge was. When they were in the first layer of Heaven Chief realm, he had seen the despair his 5 friends had experienced. In a chef's challenge, the loser would have his kitchen knife taken away. Well, do you want to know what a chef's challenge is? You'll see it soon. Facing people's puzzled faces, Bu Fong explained. Then his eyes fell on Zhao Kuang-san. "I want to keep a low profile in this Heaven Chief competition, but your enthusiasm makes me want to be high profile. Let's start with you." Bu Fong looked at Zhao Kuang-san, speaking casually. Chapter 1032. Despair. Are you King kidding me? Zhao Kuang-san turned to look at Bu Fong. The other's words had enraged him. A mere Heaven Chief from the first layer dared to talk nonsense like that. He, Zhao Kuang-san, was really strong, and he had the chance to enter the top 200 of this year's Heaven Chief competition. However, the one who was ranked 100 on the talent list dared to talk to him like that. He even said that he was desperate. All right, let's see who will make the other feel desperate. Rumble. Suddenly, a strange intent appeared in the sky, and the leaves of the immortal tree that covered the sky trembled. Bu Fong lifted his head to look, the corners of his mouth rising. The great paths will had acknowledged his chef's challenge. Now, it was going to be interesting. Boom! Zhao Kuang-san's aura rocketed. A moment later, a massive kitchen knife appeared on his back. That knife was so big that it had many mysterious patterns carved on it. "Little trash, I'm going to crush you." Zhao Kuang-san coldly looked at Bu Fong, saying that. A moment later, his mind flickered, and a stove with immortal energy hovering around it smashed in front of him. This stove was an immortal tool. Moreover, its level wasn't low. Bu Fong didn't have a stove, so he chose to use the one provided by the arena. There was no requirement for the dish he had to cook in the preliminary round. He just needed to defeat his opponent. Bu Fong had thought about what dish he wanted to cook. After thinking for a while, Bu Fong suddenly wanted to cook a dish that seemed to be very old in his memory. It was a kind of remembrance of his lost youth. Boom! Far from them, a flame emerged from Zhao Kuang-san's hand. It was a scarlet flame with a spirit, and its temperature was extremely high. As soon as it appeared, the temperature in the arena soared. It was an immortal flame, and it wasn't a low-ranked one at that. It's the 98th immortal flame on the immortal flame list. Zhao Kuang-san gazed at Bu Fong, smiling coldly. "Do you feel desperate?" Zhao Kuang-san asked. Facing Zhao Kuang-san's arrogance, Bu Fong opened his mouth. Below the stage, many Heaven Chief's attention was focused on the match between the two. Seeing that Bu Fong had opened his mouth, everyone was slightly taken aback. In the next moment, everyone was dumbfounded, because they found that flames were spurting out of Bu Fong's wide, open mouth. A golden fire lotus flew out from Bu Fong's mouth. That was an immortal fire. Many people had sharp eyes and specialized in studying the immortal fire ranking. They immediately recognized the golden fire lotus. Hiss! It's the 59th immortal fire, the golden lotus demonic fire. This guy, actually has an immortal fire of this level. What I'm concerned about is, why did the immortal fire come out of his mouth? The surrounding spectators were all dumbfounded. Why did the immortal fire float out from Bu Fang's mouth? Bu Fang glanced at Zhao Guangsan and didn't say anything, just twitching the corners of his mouth. In the next moment, with a flick of his finger, the golden lotus demonic flame entered the black turtle constellation wok. Instantly, the wok boiled. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand, spinning unceasingly in his palm. Bu Fang tossed the ingredients into the air. The blade light flickered as it descended like a meteor, cutting the ingredients into tiny pieces and fine shreds. Not far from them, Zhao Guangsan had begun to cook. Zhao Guangsan's competence wasn't bad. His foundation was really solid, and his cooking skills were methodical. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. He stirred the black wok, stirring the ingredients inside. Black clouds began to gather in the sky above the entire Heaven Tree Square. Although it was just a preliminary competition, everyone here was the Heaven Chief, and their dishes could trigger the Heaven's punishment. Black clouds arose above Bu Fang and Zhao Guangsan's heads. As the competition had come to this moment, many people were so nervous and excited. They gazed at the two in the arena. Rumble. Boom. In the void, lightning bolts unceasingly moved. Thunder dragons moved in the black clouds. Their terrifying pressure expanded unceasingly in the void. In the other arenas, the thunder dragons had already pounced. At this moment, each of the Heaven Chief was using their skills to resist the lightning punishment. In this competition, the competition didn't provide any lightning protection formation. The truly powerful Heaven Chief wasn't afraid of the lightning punishment. They all had their own skills to resist the lightning punishment. Some people crushed their jade talismans. Beams of light emerged around them, pushing the lightning punishment away. Some people summoned their earth immortal puppets to resist the lightning punishment. Some people seemed to have their own lightning protection formation. When the lightning struck, it automatically avoided them. It was like the 8 immortals crossing the sea, showing their divine abilities. Each of the Heaven Chief had used his or her lightning protection technique. The black clouds above Zhao Guangsan's head had reached the peak, and the thunder dragons were faintly visible. At this moment, Zhao Guangsan began to prepare his lightning protection technique. His mind flickered, and 2 gold earth immortal puppets emerged by his sides. To ensure that nothing would go wrong, Zhao Guangsan decided to use 2 earth immortal puppets to resist the lightning punishment. In the distance, Bu Fang's face was calm as he was cooking. He seemed to be frying something in a wok. The golden oil was boiling, with white foam moving around. Bu Fang held the wok with one hand, putting it deep into the wok. Above his head, the black clouds rolled, turning into a vortex. Zhao Guangsan's dish was done. He patted the stove, and the black wok in his hand spun. Eventually, he covered the wok, pouring the dish onto the plate. In the sky, the lightning rumbled and roared. The air, stop the lightning punishment! Zhao Guangsan shouted. All the people in the 10th group lifted their heads, gazing at the lightning punishment. All of a sudden, a faint voice resounded, drifted over, and resounded in Zhao Guangsan's ears. Don't be afraid. Your lightning punishment won't fall, Bu Fang said faintly. Swish! The dish in Bu Fang's wok was fished out. He placed it on the wok, shaking it. Steam shot up into the sky. In the sky, the lightning punishment had reached its peak, roaring and falling. Are you here to make fun of me? Zhao Guangsan looked at Bu Fang's calm face, the corners of his mouth twitching. How could the lightning punishment not fall? Do you want to make me laugh to death so that you can inherit my kitchen knife? His mind flickered, and the 2 earth immortal puppets shielded Zhao Guangsan. Roar! The thunder dragons of the lightning punishment stormed, roaring and pouncing. At the same time, the thunder dragon above Bu Fang's head shot down without any suspense. The 2 thunder dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws in the void. Then, under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of people, they clashed. The thunder dragons killed each other. Dazzling light bloomed at this moment, illuminating people's eyes. What's going on? The lightning punishments are killing each other? Oh, F***. What's going on? The Thunder Dragons are killing each other? At this moment, not only the Heaven Chief of Group 10 were surprised, but all the other Heaven Chief in the square were astonished. After all, among all the descending lightning dragons, the two that were fighting each other were the most conspicuous. Many people were bewildered, not knowing what was going on. Of course, some people were frightened, looking at the scene. They were the Heaven Chief who had gone to the first layer. Xiao Buqian gawked, dropping his jaw as he watched the scene. It's a chef's challenge. That madman. Zhao Kuangsan's eyes shrank, looking at the dazzling void in a daze. Because of the collision of the Thunder Dragons, dazzling light bloomed there. The Thunder Dragons could kill each other? What was going on? The dazzling radiance lasted for a moment. A moment later, Zhao Kuangsan was shaken. He stooped, looking at the dish he had placed on the stove. The immortal energy around the dish was shaken off, and the plate with the dish was smashed. What? Zhao Kuangsan gawked, dropping his jaw. In the sky, the Thunder Dragon's collision had ended. Zhao Kuangsan's Thunder Dragon was torn apart. At the same time, Bufang's Thunder Dragon roared and descended, aiming at Bufang's head. Xiao Bai's figure appeared in front of Bufang. He opened his leaf-like palm, grabbing the Thunder Dragon. Then, he squeezed, and the Thunder Dragon was smashed. It turned into electric arcs, entering Xiao Bai's stomach. The dark clouds slowly dispersed. Bufang's dish was done. However, it seemed he didn't need the referee's judgment. He was the winner. Because Zhao Kuangsan's dish couldn't even pass the lightning punishment, its immortal energy was shattered. At first glance, people knew that Zhao Kuangsan was defeated. The people of Group 10 were dumbstruck. The referee was also bewildered. A moment later, the will of the Great Path descended. Zhao Kuangsan's face paled in just a blink of an eye. The chef's challenge is over. The winner is Bufang, and the loser's kitchen knife belongs to the winner. A voice that sounded like the primal chaos resounded. Everybody was so frightened. It was the will of the Great Path of the Heaven Chief realm. This chef's challenge was witnessed by the will of the Great Path of the Heaven Chief realm. Despair starts from you, Bufang said indifferently, twirling the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand. He grabbed the oyster pancake, gently biting it. Crack! The oyster pancake was crushed, and its aroma arose, filling the entire place. The formation emerged, and the crystal knife cabinet appeared by Bufang. He patted the cabinet. As Zhao Kuangsan's eyes were filled with tears, his kitchen knife flew toward Bufang, and Bufang put it into the cabinet. Chef challenge. Is this the chef's challenge? Zhao Kuangsan's body shivered. He regretfully punched the stove. If he knew the chef challenge was like this, he would have been more serious and prepared better dishes. That way, he wouldn't have lost his kitchen knife. Regret. Hey! Crunch! Crunch! Bufang bit the oyster pancake, and the thick aroma diffused. As Bufang's cooking skills had improved, the oyster pancake today wasn't the same as it was in the past. The aroma seemed to have materialized, and it was more enticing than before. Sniffing the aroma, the audience felt the aura of the sea blowing on their faces. It was like huge waves pounding on them. He put away the black turtle constellation wok and the kitchen knife. Bufang clasped his hands, chewing the oyster pancake as he slowly walked down the stage. The referee was a little speechless, looking at Bufang's back as he left. It was the first time that the referee didn't need to taste the contestants' dishes. Looking at the referees in the other arenas, who were happily tasting the contestants' dishes, the referee felt like an invisible arrow had pierced his chest. Clatter! Bufang walked to the edge of the arena. He slowly turned his head, looking at the regretful Zhao Kuangsan. You want to step on me to climb up, but you failed. Of course, you have to be punished. I'm actually a low-key person, but you forced me to be high-profile, Bufang said. Then, he took another bite of the fragrant oyster pancake, walking down the stage. In this match, Bufang won without any suspense, and this match had stirred up an uproar among the people in Group 10. The concept of a chef's challenge had swept the entire place. The chef's challenge, which had been approved by the Great Path, had made people anxious. If they wanted to challenge Bufang, they had to have a chef's challenge. After Zhao Guangsan, Bufang had several more matches. The result hadn't changed. Bufang's lightning punishment had torn the opponent's lightning punishment. He had taken the opponent's kitchen knife. He had won. And, in these matches, the dishes that Bufang had cooked were exactly the same. They were all that fragrant oyster pancake. Instantly, Bufang, whom people had thought was a joke, became unfathomable in just a blink of an eye. Thunder Dragon Bite, Chef's Challenge, Oyster Pancake. The three had formed people's impression of Bufang. The most terrible thing was, until now, no one knew how Bufang's dishes tasted. That was because the judges hadn't had a chance to taste Bufang's dishes. The 100th place on the talent list, he deserved the title. The people who had watched Bufang's matches now realized this fact in despair. After several matches, the Heaven Chief, whose kitchen knives had been confiscated, felt a wave of heartache and despair. Zhao Guangsan finally understood what Bufang meant when he said that the despair would start from him. Bufang's existence had made everyone in Group 10 feel despair. In the previous matches, Bufang had been called the Dark Horse Chef. And, in this match, he wasn't called a Dark Horse anymore. He was called the Great Demon. The Great Demon who had made all his opponents despair. And this despair had just begun. Chapter 1033. The next day, Bufang came to the Heaven Tree Square. In the arena of Group 10, each Heaven Chief looked at Bufang with fear. The Great Demon, Bufang. This name had spread throughout the entire Group 10. Many Heaven Chief hoped that they wouldn't encounter Bufang. If they met Bufang, their kitchen knives would be taken away in the Chef's Challenge. They had seen the miserable situation of the contestants yesterday. Even Zhao Guangsan, who was from the third layer, had his kitchen knife taken away. How could they, who were weaker than Zhao Guangsan, dare to face the Great Demon, Bufang? The group of people who had clamored yesterday had shut their mouths, looking at Bufang in fear. Now, they didn't covet Bufang's 100th rank on the list. With Bufang's power, he deserved it. Xiao Buchuan felt like vomiting blood. He had tried so hard to persuade his big brother, Xiao Buke, to secretly change the name of the 100th rank to Bufang. He wanted to make this fellow, who had made him lose face in this Heaven Chief competition. However, he didn't expect that he had helped Bufang become famous. Although Bufang's current strength was still nothing in the whole competition, he was still a nobody. However, in Group 10, he had become the Great Demon that everyone was afraid of. Tap, tap, tap. Bufang put his hands in the pockets of his vermilion robe, slowly stepping on the arena. This Heaven Chief competition was a little boring. However, the system's temporary task asked him to participate, so he still came. The temporary task asked him to enter the top 10, gaining the qualification to enter the space of the Heaven Tree. Moreover, he had to condense the Heart of Cooking path. What was the Heart of Cooking path? Until now, Bufang didn't know much about it. Thus, at this moment, Bufang felt a headache. Swoosh! A gust of wind blew past, sweeping up some fine sand on the arena. Bufang looked at the empty space in front of him and blinked. Where was his opponent? There were many matches in the preliminary round. Because there were too many participants, Bufang had to compete many times. However, he was already used to it. However, when he stood on the stage, his opponent did not appear. In the distance, the judge looked at Bufang with a strange expression. After a long time, he exhaled. Second floor contestant, Li Guangxi, forfeit, an uproar. The moment the judge's words came out, everyone went into an uproar. The Heaven Chief was stunned. Forfeit. How many years had it been since the Heaven Chief competition had a forfeit? Had Bufang, the Great Demon, become so terrifying? However, everyone also understood that forfeiting was actually the best choice. If they lost, their kitchen knives would still be confiscated. Losing the kitchen knife was like losing an arm. He couldn't display his culinary skills to the fullest. It was very difficult to go further. Thus, it was better to forfeit. Forfeit. Bufang smacked his lips. Shrugging, he casually walked off the stage, waiting for the next match. However, Bufang's next opponent also forfeited. His opponents all forfeited. Bufong didn't participate in any match today. He returned to the inn. The judge's mouth twitched. Looking at the experts sighing and turning around, Bufong was a little speechless. It was the first time he had encountered such a strange situation. The preliminary round of the Heaven Chief competition was in full swing. In each group, the cooking competition was ongoing. These days, Gong Shu Ban was really exhausted. He had used almost all of his skills. It was a tough journey to the end. After 5 days of the preliminary round, Gong Shu Ban felt like he had aged 10 years. Only after competing would he know how terrifying the geniuses of each layer were. His sixth group was considered good. There was no Heaven Chief from the fifth layer. In fact, in the preliminary round, most of the fifth layer's Heaven Chief didn't need to participate because they had the qualification to advance to the semifinals. The fifth layer's Heaven Chief was too monstrous. However, the fourth layer, the third layer, and the second layer also had monstrous geniuses. Their goal was to enter the top 10. Gong Shu Ban had once watched a monstrous competition. Only after watching it did he understand what it meant to be crushed. That monstrous opponent couldn't even hold his kitchen knife, and he lost. That was because he had been completely suppressed by his sure. From then on, Gong Shu Ban's heart sank. It was the first time he knew how weak he was. In the first layer, he thought that he wasn't weak. However, when he compared himself, he felt hopeless. Fortunately, after the preliminary round, he managed to enter the top 100 of his group. 10 groups, a total of 1,000 Heaven Chief were left to participate in the semi-finals of the third layer. Gong Shu Ban was exhausted. However, he was still excited. It was late at night. Returning to the inn, the first layer's Heaven Chief looked dispirited, each of them showing a desperate face. These 5 days were like a nightmare that made them feel hopeless. They had seen the real, powerful Heaven Chief, the real, monstrous geniuses. Facing those existences, they didn't even have the courage to wield their kitchen knives. Gong Shu Ban's heart sank. After asking around, he found out that the first layer's team was almost wiped out. Except for him, who had entered the top 100 of his group, the others were eliminated. They couldn't advance to the semifinals. This was really a piece of news that made people despair. Gong Shu Ban's heart sank. Xianyuan Shahui also failed. Anyway, it was within his expectation. Xianyuan Shahui's innate talent wasn't bad. However, the time she had been Heaven Chief was too short. His little sister, Gong Shu Yun, was also called a genius, but she was defeated even faster. Because Gong Shu Yun was assigned to a group, this group was called the Death Group. In that group, there were 5 fifth-layer Heaven Chief and many other monstrous geniuses from other layers. Gong Shu Yun had already lost all hope. Her eyes were filled with a deathly gray color. She had almost lost confidence in her cooking skills. All right, where's Owner Bu? Gong Shu Ban suddenly remembered Bufong. With Bufong's skills, he shouldn't have been eliminated, right? At least, it shouldn't be a problem for him to enter the top 100 of his group. Hearing Gong Shu Ban mention Bufong, the lobby of the inn quieted down. Everybody looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Owner Bu was also defeated. Looking at everybody's reaction, Gong Shu Ban couldn't help but sigh. The pressure of these 5 days was too much. He didn't have the time and energy to care about Bufong's matter. And now, from their expressions, Bufong should have failed too, sigh. In this year's Heaven Chief competition, the hope was all on him. So much pressure. Cough, cough. The great demon. Oh, Owner Bu. These days, he's been staying in his room. A Heaven Chief, who was in the same group as Bufong, said awkwardly. Speaking of the name, the Great Demon, he was a little absent-minded. It was a legendary name. The Great Demon? You mean Owner Bu? Gong Shu Ban was bewildered, asking suspiciously. Creak. The door to Bufong's room suddenly opened. Clasping his hands, he slowly walked out. Neither hurried nor slow, he walked to the lobby. Seeing Gong Shu Ban, Bufong couldn't help but nod. How is it? Not bad, right? Struggling to squeeze into the top 100 in the group. Gong Shu Ban sighed. Then his strange eyes looked at Bufong. Where's Owner Bu? Me? Bufong was bewildered, also sighing. It's hard to explain in a few words. Bufong shook his head. His expression made Gong Shu Ban's eyes shrink. Could it be the number 100 in the talent list must have brought a lot of trouble to owner Bu? Gongshu Ban showed a sympathetic look, remembering the time when he and owner Bu competed in the land of inheritance. It seemed like it was just yesterday. Bufang clasped his hands, sighing again. Yeah, this title has brought a lot of trouble. I'm such a low-key person. Gongshu Ban walked to Bufang, patting Bufang's shoulder. Owner Bu, don't be discouraged. You're still young. We still have a chance in the next competition. Don't worry. I will carry your faith and move forward. I will definitely enter the top 300 in the competition. I won't lose the face of our Heaven Chief realm. Gongshu Ban's eyes focused as he said solemnly. He was talking to Bufang, as well as the Heaven Chief on the first floor. He wanted to build people's confidence again. Good luck. I'm optimistic about you. Bufang patted Gongshu Ban's shoulder, nodding. In the distance, the Heaven Chief, who was in the same group as Bufang, had his mouth twitch. This the great demon was AF** King Drama Queen. Indeed, the number 100 in the talent list had brought him a lot of trouble. His opponents didn't dare to compete with him, so they all gave up. Would he die if he didn't show off? The Heaven Chief didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The gloomy feeling in his heart dissipated. You guys continue chatting. I'm going out for a walk. Tomorrow, I'll leave the second floor. I have to walk around, said Bufang. Go, relax. Don't be discouraged. Owner Bu's future is limitless, said Gongshu Ban. A moment later, he saw Bufang turn around and leave. That young Master Gongshu. A Heaven Chief looked at Gongshu Ban's sorrowful face, wanting to say something but hesitating. Don't say it. We can't be discouraged. Our first floor is weak, but we have to be confident. If there's a will, there's a way. Gongshu Ban faced everyone, clenching his fists. Young Master Gongshu, I just want to say, the great demon has advanced to the semi-finals, said the Heaven Chief, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Advanced? Our first floor's Heaven Chief has such an excellent seedling like the great demon? Gongshu Ban was bewildered. The great demon is Owner Bu. He was the first in his group, stepping on countless people who had given up to advance. That immortal chef smacked his lips, organizing his thoughts before speaking. Gongshu Ban narrowed his eyes, looking at the Heaven Chief, feeling a little confused. A moment later, he clutched his chest, as though an invisible arrow had pierced it. He was caught off guard by Bufang's pretentious act. Owner Bu's identity was a drama queen. Long story my A**guess. Tap, tap, tap. The second floor of the Heaven Chief's world was huge, at least a little bigger than the first floor. Perhaps it was because it was stronger, but the area of the immortal city was much bigger than the immortal city of the first floor. Bufang slowly walked in the immortal city. On the streets of the immortal city, just like the first floor, there were many restaurants, and the air was filled with the rich aroma of food. In these restaurants, Bufang saw many Heaven Chief cooking. Indeed, compared to the first and second floors, the cooking skills were several levels higher. Bufang clasped his hands, walking on the street. The people coming and going made him feel very happy. The aroma of food, the pedestrians tasting the food, it made Bufang a little infatuated. All of a sudden, Bufang's footsteps halted. He slightly lifted his head, looking into the distance. There, several figures blocked Bufang's figure. In front of him were two men and two women, two young couples. The men were handsome, and the women were elegant. The four of them smiled at Bufang. Oh, Group 10's the Great Demon. Heaven Chief ranked 100th on the talent list. Is that you? A woman nestled in a man's arms looked at Bufang, asking faintly, Big Brother Buke, I heard that the Great Demon could enter the talent list because of you. Why didn't you make his rank higher? He's only ranked 99th, just one rank higher than this imposter. It's so embarrassing. Another woman nestled in the arms of a tall, handsome man lifted her head to look at that man. Bufang furrowed his brows as he looked at the four people who were showing off their affection in front of him. 99, what business do you have with me? It's not a good day today, so please don't go in pairs. I'm afraid I can't control my power. Bufang gently exhaled, his face expressionless. Chapter 10:34. What nonsense is this kid talking about? There were 4 people in front of Bufong. Hearing Bufong's words, they were somewhat dumbfounded. What the hell was the Great Desolation Force? What did it have to do with today's event? Of course, Bufong didn't bother to explain. He just calmly looked at the 4 people in front of him, wanting to see what they wanted to do. 99th Big Sister? The woman by Xiao Buke's side was instantly stunned. In the next moment, her fair face instantly flushed red, and her eyes surged with rage. Who are you calling Big Sister? The woman stared at Bufong as if she was about to shoot out lightning. Xiao Buke raised his hand and patted the woman's soft back, smiling faintly. Your Excellency, aren't you curious about who put you on the genius list? The genius list contains the names of all the geniuses in this year's Heaven Chief competition. Only the real geniuses can be on that list. Why do you think you're on that list? Xiao Buke squinted at Bufong. Maybe someone is jealous of my handsomeness. Bufong knitted his brows, rubbing his chin as he said seriously. Jealous of your handsomeness? Xiao Buke almost spurted out a mouthful of blood. Could he not talk nonsense so seriously? However, the 100th place? It seems that this person's jealousy isn't enough. He didn't see through my appearance and see my true qualities, said Bufong. The 4 people's faces became somewhat strange. This the great demon was not a fool. To tell you the truth, the one who put you on the genius list is me, Xiao Buke said. Bufong's eyes became strange, staring at Xiao Buke. So you're jealous of my handsomeness? Xiao Buke's face froze. Could they have a proper conversation? I thought that the 100th place on the genius list would make you the target of everyone, but it seems that you're not bad. You've actually defeated many challenges from the Heaven Chief, and even got the title of the Great Demon. Xiao Buke said lightly. However, your luck is quite good. You were assigned to a trashy group. However, you won't be so lucky in the semifinals. When the time comes, I hope I can personally crush you. Brother Buke, there's no need for you to take action against this kind of trash. I can crush him. He's just a fake top 100. The woman stared coldly at Bufong and said coldly, Here, I'll give you a piece of advice. You'd better scram back to the first level with your tail between your legs. Otherwise, you'll feel true despair in the days to come. Xiao Buke said. Bufong looked at him and twitched the corner of his mouth. Every time someone tells me to feel despair, they really feel despair. Also, from the looks of it, you seem to know a lot. Let me ask you a question. What is the heart of cooking path? Bufong asked faintly. Xiao Buke and the others were stunned. Then, the 4 of them looked at each other and laughed in disdain. I didn't expect you to know about the heart of cooking path. What a pity. The heart of cooking path isn't something a trash like you can imagine. It's something you need to look up to. The 4 of them didn't explain much to Bufong. They laughed and left. Bufong was a little speechless. He put both of his hands into his pockets, then continued to move forward. Heaven Chief World, top floor in front of the wooden house. Yaya wore a pure white robe, her blonde hair coiled up. She stood in front of the house, looking incomparably noble. Her eyes were calm, and her body seemed to emit light. A moment later, beams of light appeared in front of the wooden house. 4 figures suddenly appeared in front of her. The appearances of these 4 figures could not be seen clearly. One could only vaguely make out some blurry shadows. They seemed to be talking to Yaya. After a while, they scattered, disappearing in front of the wooden house. Yaya had a headache, rubbing her glabella. Those 4 city lords are really troublesome. I can't believe they want to trouble that dog. Yaya sighed, then turned around and entered the wooden house. The Heaven Chief World was divided into 5 layers, and each layer was a great world. The 3rd layer was a vast ocean, and in the center of the ocean was a large island. The Heaven Tree towered above the big island. The entire immortal city was built on this big island. The semi-finals of the Heaven Chief World Competition would be held in this immortal city on the 3rd layer. There were 1,000 contestants in the semi-finals, and they were formed from the top 100 of the 10 groups in the preliminary round. However, The rules of the semifinals were different from the preliminary round. The semifinals had 2 rounds. The first round was the elimination round, and the second round was the ranking round. The elimination round would eliminate 500 people, and the second round would rank the remaining 500 people. The top 100 could enter the semifinals. The rules were simple. The competition would last for 3 days. However, Bufong seemed to have nothing to do. Since he was the first in his group, Bufong could skip the elimination round and go directly to the ranking round. Thus, on the first day, Bufong didn't even need to go to the competition. However, at Gongshu Ban's request, he still went to watch Gongshu Ban's match. Since they were the Heaven Chief of the same layer, of course, he had to cheer for him. Gongshu Ban had to participate in the elimination round. If he wanted to enter the ranking round, he had to fight his way through the elimination round. It could be said to be simple, but it could also be said to be difficult. Because who knew what kind of opponent Gongshu Ban would face in the elimination round? However, Gongshu Ban was confident in himself. His goal was to enter the top 200, so he had to work hard to defeat his opponents. In fact, Gongshu Ban had worked hard. In the elimination round, he had defeated 2 opponents consecutively. However, when he met his last opponent, it was the beginning of his despair. Bufong had also watched that match. However, because he had watched it, Bufong felt a little strange. Gongshu Ban's opponent was a Heaven Chief in a black cloak. According to the information, this Heaven Chief came from the 4th layer. Facing this opponent, Gongshu Ban was defeated. He didn't even have the courage to hold his knife. It was a direct suppression, and that black-cloaked man gave Bufong an extremely strange feeling. Heart of Cooking Path. Bufong suddenly thought of something, furrowing his brows. According to the system's description, only the Heart of Cooking Path could make someone unable to lift their knife. Did that black-cloaked Heaven Chief have the Heart of Cooking Path? But why would the Heaven Chief, who had the Heart of Cooking Path, participate in the elimination round? This was what made Bufong suspicious. Gongshu Ban was defeated, unable to enter the ranking round. His mind was on the verge of collapse. He had persisted for a long time, but in the end, he couldn't reach his ideal. The ideal was great, but the reality was too cruel. Except for Bufong, the Heaven Chief of the 1st layer was almost wiped out. Gongshu Ban was even more devastated. It was because of the last match, which had created a shadow in his heart. Facing his opponent, he didn't even have the courage to hold his knife. This feeling was too terrifying. The gap between the Heaven Chief of the 1st layer and the other layers. Was it really that big? Facing Gongshu Ban's mental breakdown, Bufong didn't know what to say. He could only pat Gongshu Ban's shoulder. "Owner Bu, we can only rely on you now," Gongshu Ban said to Bufong, his eyes hollow. The ranking round had begun. Bufong finally had a match. Gongshu Ban had become a spectator. However, he had placed all his hopes on Bufong. He hoped that Bufong could enter the top 200. The ranking round and the elimination round were different. The ranking round was actually the main event of the Heaven Chiefs competition. The rules of the competition had changed a lot. The ranking round would start from 3 aspects: the Heaven Chief's cultivation base, the Heaven Chief's knife skills, and the final grade of the immortal dishes would be judged to determine the final ranking. Next, 1st layer Heaven Chief, Bufong. The referee called out Bufong's name. The Heaven Chief, who was watching the competition, quieted down at this moment. Regarding the name Bufong, some people were unfamiliar with it, but some people weren't. The legendary performance of the 10th group in the preliminary round had made many people give Bufong the title of the Great Demon. Any opponent who had competed with him would be left with an impression of despair. And now, it was finally Bufong's turn in the ranking round. Many contestants from the 10th group suddenly hoped to see the scene of Bufong being crushed. There were 50 people competing with Bufong in the ranking round. 50 people stood on the vast arena, facing the judges who were all 3rd-grade immortal chefs sitting on the high platform. The first round is to show your cultivation base. As a Heaven Chief, cooking skills are the key, but without a profound cultivation base, it's hard to have profound cooking skills. Everyone should know this, right? That's why cultivation base is a big part of the score. I hope you can show your cultivation base well. In front of you, there's a divine talisman to test your cultivation base. This talisman can accurately test your true energy cultivation base and mental force, the referee said. 50 people stood on the arena. In front of each of them was a stone platform, on which there was a green divine talisman. This talisman was a tool to test one's cultivation base. Around the arena, a group of Heaven Chief gathered to watch the fun. Among them, some were eliminated, and of course, some had advanced. There were even some contestants who had finished the ranking round. Everyone looked at the situation in the field curiously. Bufong, on the other hand, had become the center of attention. Of course, since Bufong was the first in his group to advance, the contestants who were going to take the test with him weren't weak. Among them, there was even the Fifth Layer's Heaven Chief. The Fifth Layer's Heaven Chief was an unreachable existence in the hearts of all the Heaven Chief. Whether it was resources or cultivation conditions, the fifth floor was much better than the other floors. Thus, in Bufong's group, the real focus was the Fifth Layer's Heaven Chief. As for Bufong, many people saw him as a joke. Gongshu Ban's face paled. The ranking round also tested one's cultivation base. What was Bufong's cultivation base like? Of course, it was unsightly, one-star, true, immortal realm cultivation base. Among the many Heaven Chief, it could be said that he was the lowest existence. With this kind of cultivation base, how could he get a good ranking in the ranking round? It seemed the First Layer's Heaven Chief would be completely wiped out this time. This time, the performance of the First Layer's contestants was even worse than the previous years. Now the test begins. First round, True Energy Level Test. Contestants, please send your true energy into the Divine Talisman. The referee, who was in charge of the test, opened his mouth and said, on the high platform, the 5 judges watched with great interest. Buzz, as soon as the referee's voice fell, true energy shot up to the sky on the high platform. Terrifying waves of energy expanded unceasingly. At this moment, every contestant tried their best to show their cultivation base. Beams of light shot out from the divine talisman. In the sky, a pitch-black stone tablet emerged. That stone tablet stretched across the sky. As the contestants sent their true energy into the divine talisman, the stone tablet would show their ranking. Bufong held the divine talisman, sending his true energy into it. His body suddenly trembled. Bufong curiously lifted his head, looking at the beam of light above his head. The strength of the contestant's cultivation base would be reflected by the height of the beam of light above his head. Bufong looked pensive. A moment later, he turned his head to look around. The contestants around him all had beams of light above their heads, and the height of those beams was much higher than Bufong's. The Heaven Chief, who could reach this step, didn't have a weak cultivation base or cooking skill. Most of them were the peak existences among immortal chef, and they could cook third-grade immortal dishes. The weakest among them was at 2-star true immortal realm. Thus, among the thousands of beams of light, Bufong's beam of light was really eye-catching, and the Heaven Chief from the 5th layer had a beam of light that was 15 meters high, which was like a crane in a flock of chickens. No comparison, no harm. After the audience saw the result, they couldn't help but burst into an uproar. And the Heaven Chief, who had been waiting for Bufong's performance, didn't hesitate to laugh at him. The stone tablet also showed the contestants' cultivation base rankings. Gongshu Ban was almost desperate. Seeing Bufong's name in the last place, his entire face turned ashen. Bufong dispersed his beam of light, his face incomparably calm. The contestants around him all looked at Bufong with disdain in their eyes. That kind of cultivation base was really ridiculous. It was ridiculous that a Heaven Chief with such a level could reach this level. And the Heaven Chief from the 10th group, who couldn't breathe because of Bufong, didn't hesitate to mock him. This time, the great demon was really speechless. Now we'll start the second test, the mental force test. Please hold the divine talisman and guide your mental force into it. The referee's face was serious as he said. A moment later, each contestant guided their mental force into the divine talisman. Some of them even sneered at Bu Fong as they guided him. They wanted to see Bu Fong make a fool of himself. Under normal circumstances, the mental force level and the true energy level were directly proportional. The stronger the true energy, the stronger the mental force. Of course, there were some exceptions. Some people's true energy level was weak, but their mental force wasn't necessarily weak. Even if their mental force was strong, it wouldn't be by much. At 1-star true immortal realm, the highest mental force one could reach was 2-star true immortal realm. It was already an incredible situation. Under normal circumstances, Bu Fong would very likely become the laughingstock of the crowd, just like his true energy level. He gently exhaled. Bu Fong reached out his hand, holding the divine talisman. The corners of his mouth slightly rose. In his mind, 3 bestial roars resounded. Comparing mental force, he had never been afraid of anyone. Chapter 1035. The arena was surrounded by a group of Heaven Chief. They whispered into each other's ears as they looked at the contestants on the stage with a playful look on their faces. Of course, most of their gazes were on Bu Fong. The Great Demon was just a joke now. The Great Demon, who had dominated Group 10, had fallen to the last place in the first round of the ranking competition. His true energy cultivation was only at 1-star true immortal realm. With this kind of cultivation, most of the people here could easily defeat Bu Fong. However, the people here were not stupid. Bu Fong's mental force cultivation might be stronger. After all, Bu Fong's dominance in the preliminaries was not fake. Since his true energy level was slightly weaker, his mental force would naturally be stronger. However, his true energy level was only at 1-star true immortal realm. No matter how strong his mental force was, how strong could it be? Hence, everyone was looking forward to Bu Fong's next performance. They had even prepared their sarcastic words. Another buzzing sound rang out. A frightening fluctuation immediately spread out on the stage. Everyone held their breaths as they stared at the situation on the stage. Beams of light shot up into the sky. Mental force was more mysterious than true energy cultivation, and its fluctuations were more subtle. Boom, boom, boom. Spiritual energy swept out like a tidal wave and scattered in all directions, stirring up thousands of waves. In the next instant, in front of everyone's eyes, thousands of beams of light appeared on the arena. Each of the immortal chefs had mustered all of their energy, constantly pushing their mental force to the extreme. The crowd was in an uproar. That was because all sorts of dazzling and resplendent lights caused everyone to exclaim in surprise. 1 zhong, 2 zhong, 3 zhong. Beams of light of different heights appeared. Among them, the Heaven Chief from the 5th layer had a light beam above his head that was not weaker than the true energy level. Moreover, it was still rising. At this rate, it was likely to break through 5 zhong and reach 6 zhong. He was indeed worthy of being the genius Heaven Chief from the 5th layer. He was indeed strong. It was said that this person was only ranked around 90 on the talent list. He was considered to be one of the weaker ones among the 5th layer Heaven Chief. Hiss, hiss, hiss. People would only be amazed when they saw a real genius. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Some people thought of Bu Fong, the Great Demon, who was as dazzling as a star in the preliminaries, was now completely silent. Everyone looked over and found Bu Fong's position. But in the next moment, everyone fell into a daze. There seemed to be the roar of a dragon and the cry of a bird in his ears. Everyone was in a trance. Looking at the incomparably bright and towering light beam above Bu Fong's head, they all looked as if they had seen a ghost. What's going on? This height has reached 50 feet, almost at the level of the 5th floor Heaven Chief. The Great Demon, it's still the Great Demon. It's still so despairing. The Heaven Chief around the ring were all dumbstruck as they looked on in shock. Gong Shuban was a little bewildered. He had thought that there was no hope, but now it seemed that it wasn't the case. There was still hope. Bu Fong's mental force cultivation was extraordinary. This explained why Bufong's true energy cultivation was so weak, but he could cook such powerful dishes. This mental force was really terrifying. A glimmer of hope at the darkest hour. Gongshu Ban felt his eyes brighten all of a sudden. It's still rising. It's already 55 feet. Oh my God. The great demon wants to go against the heavens. Is he going to get first place and step on the geniuses of the fifth layer? The onlookers sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the light beam above Bufong's head that was still rising, their eyes were filled with disbelief. It seemed that Bufong and the fifth-floor Heaven Chief's light beam had been overshadowed. The other Heaven Chief's mental force light beam wasn't that shocking. Compared to the 100 blooming flowers' true energy cultivation, their mental force cultivation was a little weak. Among them, the highest one was only 40 feet. Although it was a good result compared to Bufong and the fifth-floor Heaven Chief's light beam, it was a little insignificant. The fifth-floor Heaven Chief seemed to feel the pressure from Bufong. He couldn't help but turn his head, looking at Bufong's direction. It was a young man with an ordinary appearance. He stared at Bufong, his eyes narrowing. A moment later, he sneered, and his mental force rose again. At this moment, the young man's light beam had reached 57 feet. Bufong was very calm. His spirit sea surged, and his mental force continued to rise. Soon, it reached 56 feet. It was close to the level of the fifth-floor Heaven Chief. The onlookers couldn't help but hold their breaths. At this moment, this test seemed to become the stage for Bufong and the fifth-floor Heaven Chief. 58 feet, 59 feet. The fifth-floor Heaven Chief's face gradually turned red. His body was slightly shaking. Apparently, he didn't want to let Bufong surpass him, so he displayed his mental force to the extreme. Boom! Finally, the fifth-floor Heaven Chief's mental force made a leap. It broke through the 59-feet shackle and reached the 6-foot level. This meant that the fifth-floor Heaven Chief's mental force had reached at least the 3-star true immortal realm. However, as his mental force broke through to the 6-foot level, the fifth-floor Heaven Chief's nose had a hot stream, and fresh blood flowed from it. A moment later, his mental force beam stopped moving, and his eyes looked at Bufong, staring at him. Bufong glanced at him and saw the blood flowing out of the latter's nose. He furrowed his brows. At this moment, Bufong's mental force had reached the 59 feet level, and he was facing the 6-foot shackle. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. This the great demon. Could he reach the 6-foot level? However, he didn't give them much time to guess. The light beam easily broke through 6 feet. The relaxed look was as if he was just drinking water. 6 feet, 61 feet. When the light beam reached this level, Bufong didn't continue to increase it. He retracted the light beam. He could easily suppress that immortal chef from the 5th layer. In the sky, the black stone tablet emerged again, and the ranking on it had undergone an earth-shaking change. Bufong's name, which was originally in the last place, swooshed to the 1st place. He had stepped on the 2nd place, the 5th-floor genius, the Heaven Chief. This was the first time someone had stepped on the 5th-floor Heaven Chief. No wonder he was the great demon. Everyone looked at Bufong with complicated eyes. No wonder he was ranked 100th on the genius list. Boom! Everyone's light beams dispersed. Everyone was hesitant and couldn't believe it. The young Heaven Chief from the 5th floor wiped the warm blood from his nose, his eyes cold. He couldn't imagine that he would be suppressed. In the semifinals, there was someone who could suppress him. In the audience below the stage, Gongshu Ban excitedly clenched his fists, roaring. Bufong's rise had swept away all the gloominess in his heart. He was so happy. All of a sudden, Gongshu Ban was bewildered. He turned his head to look in the distance. There, a figure wrapped in a black cloak was staring at Bufong on the stage. That gaze was so hot. That kind of heat made Gongshu Ban's heart tremble. In the knockout round, Gongshu Ban, had met this black cloak man. Facing this black cloaked man, he didn't even have the courage to hold his knife. He didn't expect that this black cloaked man was interested in Owner Boo. Who was this black cloaked man? The first part of the ranking competition is over. Next, the second part the test of cutting skills, the referee's voice interrupted everyone's clamor. Everyone quietened down. Everyone's gazes landed on the arena. On the stage, the 50 contestants were already in position. So-called knife skills. What is it about? The stronger the knife skill, the stronger the momentum. So, the strength of your knife skill will be judged by the momentum you show when you use your knife skill. The referee said. Everyone agreed with this point. To put it bluntly, knife skills could also be called knife techniques. It was the combination of a chef's spirit, energy, and spirit, while momentum was the materialization of the chef's spirit, energy, and spirit, which had a kind of oppressive force. The knife skills assessment will be carried out in a formation that covers the entire arena. When the time comes, common ingredients will appear in front of everyone. You just need to display your knife skills when processing the ingredients. According to the confrontation of forces, the speed at which you are eliminated will determine the ranking. The referee said. Then a long, purple spirit fruit appeared on the stone platform in front of everyone. This is the immortal fruit used to practice knife skills. Now, I announce that the knife skills assessment starts now, the referee said. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire arena flashed with radiance. While the audience was in an uproar, they found that an array had emerged on the arena's floor. That array revolved unceasingly, covering everyone inside. The Heaven Chief outside the arena could see that the contestants' auras had begun to change. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, it was time to show everyone's kitchen knife. Buzz, tens of thousands of knife lights emerged. One by one, the contestants took out their kitchen knives, which they were proud of. A chef was proud of his kitchen knife, and the Heaven Chief was even more so. The kitchen knives of the Heaven Chief were undoubtedly immortal tools. Moreover, they weren't ordinary immortal tools. They were at least mid-grade immortal tools. In the midst of the uproar, all kinds of dazzling kitchen knives emerged in front of everyone's eyes. Those kitchen knives were also different. Some looked like scissors and some looked like gourds, all kinds. At this moment, the Heaven Chief from the 5th layer wore a serious face. He coldly looked at Bufong, then took out his own kitchen knife. It was a purple kitchen knife, its blade full of patterns. It wasn't thick and was rather thin. However, as soon as he took it out, it was undoubtedly the highest grade immortal knife here. Each kitchen knife seemed to tremble under the pressure of this kitchen knife. Immortals had spirits. No doubt the tool spirits of their kitchen knives were trembling at this moment. The Heaven Chief from the 5th layer was extremely serious. The kitchen knife in his hand spun, then he suddenly threw it up. The knife light bloomed in the sky. In the next moment, they fell down and turned into a continuous drizzle that enveloped the purple indestructible fruit. Above the head of the 5th layer's Heaven Chief, an invisible force emerged. That force seemed to turn into a painting, a misty and hazy water village in Jiangnan. It's the inherited knife skill of the 5th layer's Heaven Chief Hall, the misty rain knife. Some people recognized this knife skill, exclaiming in surprise. Obviously, this knife skill was extraordinary. The other Heaven Chief also showed their knife skills at this moment. Some condensed wild lions, some condensed stars, some condensed storms, and some condensed waves. There were all kinds of them. This was the force of their knife skill. In Bufong, Buzz, a golden light beam shot out. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in Bufong's hand, twirling and twirling it. When the kitchen knife spun, the sharp knife energy constantly scattered in all directions, cutting off the surrounding people's momentum. The moment the force burst out, everyone's forces began to compete. The array's range was only so big. Every space occupied by one's force, the other's forces would have less space. Thus, competition was inevitable. In just a moment, as Bufong's knife skill was displayed, the competition reached its peak. The Overlord 13 blades turned into one blade. Above the dragon bone kitchen knife, the shadow of a dragon hovered, its roar echoing as it turned into a blade that could tear heaven and earth. Above Bufong's head, the shadow of an incomparably majestic Overlord emerged. Boom, boom, boom. The Overlord descended. In just a moment, the Heaven Chief's forces in the arena began to collapse. Chapter 1036. At first, Bufong wanted to use the cutting immortal style. However, after thinking about it, the power of the cutting immortal style was stronger than the Overlord 13 blades, and Bufong hadn't mastered it yet. Yeah, if he can't condense the Heart of Cooking path, his achievement as a chef of this layer will come to an end. That kind of feeling made people despair. Could it be it was the first time Bufong felt the pressure? The dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand paused. Everyone below the arena could see it clearly. In the next instant, his entire aura suddenly changed. She couldn't endure for more than 1 second before collapsing. Gongshu Ban's eyes reddened. He clenched his fists, biting his lips so hard that they bled. However, it was the most effective way to suppress the great demon. Gongshu Ban was enraged. What's wrong with the first layer's heaven chief? The referee's eyes were a little surprised, staring at him. Xiao Buke and the others grinned. Indeed, as they had expected, everything was over. The referee sighed. The audience only saw the dazzling knife light in Bufong's hand. A moment later, the immortal fruit changed its shape unceasingly. Gongshu Ban's eyes widened. Even the Overlord was slightly suppressed. Wasn't his knife technique the same as shooting stars when he slashed down with his knife? At this moment, on the arena, besides Bufong, only the other Heaven Chief and the other Heaven Chief were left. Just a cornered beast struggle. That was because the remaining 5 people had joined forces to deal with Bufong. The eyes of the 5th layer's Heaven Chief fell on the other Heaven Chief, as though he was sending them some message. Thus, Bufong thought that it would be risky to use it. The Heaven Chief had power, but the strength of his power was different. Just like that, he had completely destroyed him. The audience had complicated eyes. Some of them even looked at Bufong with admiration. Below the arena, rumble, rumble. The great demon is so ferocious. He destroyed everyone sure like a chicken or a stray dog. The 5 judges on the high platform narrowed their eyes and looked at Bufong curiously. His momentum was like a tidal wave, surging and surging. Overlord 13 Blades was a blade skill provided by the system. Xiao Buchuan, Xiao Buke, and the others clasped their hands behind their backs as they watched the competition on the arena. Bufong was nothing in his eyes. Their smiles did not last long before they froze. An indifferent voice suddenly resounded. It turned into a violent storm and completely crushed towards Bufong. It's over. In the end, the great demon didn't succeed. Gongshu Ban cursed. The Heaven Chief of the 5th floor sneered. He knew that Bufong's knife skill was very good, but it was really beyond his expectation that it was so good. The Heaven Chief on the 5th floor let out a furious roar. The next moment, in just a blink of an eye, he would be completely smashed. It's useless. The chefs of this floor will lose. The buzzing sound echoed unceasingly. The elder sister, who ranked 99th, looked at the peerless Bufong in the arena and couldn't help but murmur. Compared to Bufong, who was walking leisurely in his own courtyard, the dragon bone kitchen knife was constantly spinning in Bufong's hand. Cries of astonishment and furious roars of unwillingness resounded in the surroundings. In just a blink of an eye, the atmosphere in the arena changed greatly. His indifferent face also became slightly solemn. There was a loud explosion. It seemed that the great demon couldn't escape this calamity. This kind of change in momentum between offense and defense almost caused Bufong to be expelled from the arena. A moment later, their eyes fell on the arena again. I didn't expect that the Heaven Chief from the 1st floor could have this level of knife skill. Knife skill. Cutting immortal. One of them was the Heaven Chief from the 5th floor, who was using the misty rain knife skill. He seemed to have never seen this knife skill before. The Overlord was suppressed. His eyes opened a little bit, and a scarlet light shot out. The robes of the 6 people in the arena fluttered unceasingly in the wind. The Heaven Chief under the arena sighed with emotion. He has no future. Once he loses in this level of confrontation, his mind will collapse, and he won't be able to condense the heart of cooking path for the rest of his life. The four of them were the talented Heaven Chief from the second, third, and fourth floors. However, could they really suppress the great demon? In the arena, Bufong's space of sure had been compressed to a small area. The judge looked at the 5 judges with a questioning look in his eyes. Xiao Buke exhaled. Bufong's power suddenly made him feel a little bit of pressure. The competition between the 5 of them suddenly changed at this moment. The sound of people taking in a breath of cold air arose. At least, it was much better than the mountain of radishes he used to practice his knife skill. Xiao Buke's face was a little dark as he said coldly, "It's over." She suddenly felt her heart palpitate. Everyone understood the thoughts of the other immortal chefs in the arena. At this moment, Bufong was concentrating on dealing with the immortal fruit. The top Heaven Chief of the Heaven Chief realm used this immortal fruit to practice his knife skill. Unfortunately, the 5 judges seemed to favor the 5th layer's Heaven Chief more. Thus, Bufong had chosen the more stable Overlord 13 Blades. Moreover, the Overlord 13 Blades had always been overbearing. 13 blades fused into one, whose power could bear such a strong pressure. Or, in other words, Bufong's knife skill had always been provided by the system. Holy **T. Some people couldn't believe it, as they didn't understand why they had failed. Indeed, the performance of the other Heaven Chief in the arena made people angry. Especially at this moment, he lifted his head, looking at the 5 people who had joined hands, his eyes narrowing. The Overlord Phantom appeared. Boom! One by one, the Heaven Chief was eliminated. However, the 5 judges shook their heads, indicating that the confrontation should continue. Everybody was a little hesitant. After all, these 5 people were the Heaven Chief geniuses of their respective layers. They all had the chance to enter the top 100 of the Heaven Chief competition. It was like a silent roar of an overlord. Everyone let out cries of surprise. Many people were still looking at the situation on the stage in disbelief. Facing the 5 people's auras, Bufong also felt the pressure. All of a sudden, the geniuses of the various layers have joined hands to suppress the great demon. Although it's unfair, it's so exciting, because on the arena, it was too early to be happy. Gongshu Ban clenched his fists, secretly hatefully watching the scene on the arena. With the Overlord Phantom behind Bufong as the center, the auras of the other Heaven Chief constantly shattered. Above his head, a hazy scroll unfolded, as beautiful as the misty rain of Jiangnan. The ground under Bufong's feet also cracked. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and cracks began to spread. Bufong seemed to have noticed this as well. This is a little too much. However, as the Heaven Chief of the first layer, he could only be bullied and humiliated below the arena. One person's knife technique was displayed to the extreme, and his eyes seemed to be blooming with light. "Is it necessary to bully the great demon like this?" said the 99-ranked elder sister. "Otherwise, it would be shameful to let a Heaven Chief from the first layer get the first place in the test." Bufong was still in the mood to talk to the system. Wrapped in a black cloak, the Heaven Chief's eyes sparkled. Defeated? Actually, the judges were a little optimistic about Bufong. No one would have thought that the Heaven Chief from the first layer could show such a domineering and powerful aura. The other people around him felt the pressure was huge. The knife techniques of these 4 weren't ordinary. From their auras, they weren't much weaker than the Heaven Chief from the 5th layer. Everyone's eyes were shining as they stared at the competition on the arena. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. According to Gongshu Ban's guess, the power of that knife technique was almost at the level of the Misty Rain knife technique. Bufong finally lifted his head, looking at his compressed aura and the crazed faces of the 5 people in the distance. The spinning dragon bone kitchen knife finally stopped spinning. Bufong held it tightly in his hand. "This is really... Why? I'm such a low-profile person. Why did you force me to be high-profile?" The Misty Rain knife skill was displayed to the extreme. The Misty Rain spread out and enveloped the Overlord. This aura crack. In the distance, an invisible wave affected the surroundings. The Heaven Chief's auras were disintegrating at a speed naked eyes could observe. The five people's knife auras suddenly changed. When the Heaven Chief around the arena saw that, they couldn't help but widen their eyes. Despicable. These damned bastards. Everyone sighed helplessly. System, you can import this fruit. It's the best way to practice your knife skills. The five people's auras instantly swallowed up the last bit of aura that was left in Bufong. From his point of view, the competition of knife auras was originally a competition. To be able to unite others, to eliminate one's opponent, was also a form of competition. However, let's watch. The chef from that layer can't hold on for long. So strong. As soon as the knife aura was released, the surrounding Heaven Chief all collapsed. The ordinary Heaven Chief was almost swept away. The knife technique test tested the Heaven Chief's control of the aura. From the strength of the aura, one could see the strength of the knife technique. I feel sorry for the Great Demon for a second. I suddenly wish that the Great Demon could suppress them. The fifth layer's Heaven Chief transmitted his voice to the remaining four Heaven Chiefs. A moment later, on the arena, a dazzling knife light seemed to flash from the end of the void. Xiao Buke's opponents were the monstrous geniuses of the fifth floor of Heaven Chief realm. After a while, that's right, that's the feeling. The Heaven Chief's aura, which had collapsed because of Bufong's Overlord knife aura, grabbed their hair in annoyance, their eyes red. The five people's kitchen knives danced. The competitive relationship between their auras began to change. In the end, it seemed to become a united front, fighting against Bufong's Overlord aura. The black-robed man muttered. Seeing that the space of Bufong's knife aura was completely swallowed, and the Overlord phantom disappeared, some people stood blankly on the stage, not knowing what to do. However, today Bufong had shown an even more overbearing knife technique. His finger gently flicked the dragon bone kitchen knife. He wasn't willing. His mental force was suppressed by Bufong, which made him very unhappy. Now, this guy wanted to suppress him with his knife technique. Bufong's knife technique was too overbearing. It had almost plundered the space around him. They wanted to work together to force the Great Demon King out of the arena and then divide the remaining rankings. If she had to face the combined knife aura of the five geniuses from different layers, the undying fruit was a dish used to practice knife technique. No matter how you cut it, after 10 seconds, it would return to its original state. It was the Great Demon's voice. The Great Demon was ranked 100 on the genius list. He deserved it. The audience was completely shocked by the scene in the arena. At this moment, they were all struggling under Bufong's Overlord knife aura. Despicable lost. The Great Demon lost. Why couldn't the Heaven Chief of the first layer get a good result? Apparently, the referee also understood the consequences of losing in this kind of confrontation. Someone muttered. Gong Shuban also faced the sky, giving a long sigh. What a pity. He found that the undying fruit was really a good thing. Looks like the Great Demon can't hold it anymore. No matter what, it's the combination of the geniuses from different layers. Explode. Completely smash that kid's aura, leave a hole in his heart, and he will never be able to condense the heart of cooking path. His brows slightly furrowed. Boom! On the arena, the Great Demon from the first layer should be proud. At the moment his aura changed, the aura of the Heaven Chief was incomparably strong. Bufong's aura rose. The Great Demon is finished. I didn't want to use it. Anyway, let's test its power. Moreover, there were 4 Heaven Chief. However, it was just a pressure. Compared to the Heaven Chief, who was watching the fun, the Heaven Chief in the arena felt more direct. Boom! Everyone's face was incomparably solemn. Regarding the system's knife technique, Bufong was very confident. Indeed, he couldn't see through Ownerbu. Bufong exhaled deeply. In the distance, the Heaven Chief, who was wrapped in a black cloak, was so excited that his body shivered. His eyes seemed to be bursting with excitement. The referee didn't move. Apparently, he approved this behavior. All right. Chapter 10:37. Knife Skill, cutting immortal. An extremely calm voice resounded in the arena. In the arena, the five Heaven Chief, who had been smiling, changed their faces. This voice was Bufang's voice, which they had suppressed. However, how come his voice didn't sound defeated? Instead, it was full of confidence. Bufang's aura was about to be broken by them. How could Bufang be so confident? Where did his confidence come from? Not only them in the arena, below the arena, the surrounding people also revealed such astonished expressions. Gong Shuban, who had been cursing continuously, was bewildered. Then he became excited. Both of his hands patted the edge of the arena. He craned his neck and roared, F***CK him up. Owner boo. F***CK them up. Mother ***cur. The surrounding people looked at Gong Shuban as if they were looking at a lunatic. Is this fellow sick? Can't he be more refined? The referee also found something different. He furrowed his brows. Focusing, he continued to watch. Could it be that the great demon from the first layer could make a comeback? He was suppressed to that extent. Could he still have a chance to make a comeback? For a moment, the referee was interested. Cutting immortal. This name is really arrogant. That blade light seemed to burst out from the depths of the void. In that split second, it was so dazzling that it illuminated everyone's eyes, making them feel astonished. The mind of the fifth layer's Heaven Chief shivered. His eyes instantly became incomparably sluggish. Damn it! Combine the blade power. Quick! The fifth layer's Heaven Chief roared. A moment later, the misty and hazy picture unfolded again. The other four Heaven Chief were also startled. Their blade light swept, their blade power fusing. At Bufang's position, the originally dim brilliance slowly brightened. The space that was compressed to less than an inch slowly expanded. The five people were frightened to see that Bufang's blade power was continuously growing. That speed of growth was simply unheard of. An ethereal shadow slowly emerged above Bufang's head. That shadow actually looked somewhat similar to Bufang, or rather, it was just Bufang's body that had been enlarged. What kind of knife skill was this? Everyone in the audience was horrified. Expand, expand. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife, and a dragon roar rang out from the kitchen knife. In the next moment, there seemed to be a phantom of a divine dragon hovering around Bufang's kitchen knife. Bufang's eyes gradually became bright and dazzling. A blade slashed down on the immortal fruit. The indestructible fruit had shattered, and it was actually difficult to recover. There was a tearing noise. At this moment, it was as if everything had turned into this blade. The saber slashed down. Everything seemed to have become quiet. Boom! The phantom behind Bufang slowly took out a kitchen knife. Following Bufang's movements, it slowly slashed forward. Bufang's power was growing rapidly. Soon, it completely suppressed the power of the other five people. Such a terrifying scene caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Oh my God, this is fake, right? The great demon rose again. It's really the terrifying great demon. Does he want to suppress the five-top Heaven Chief alone? The surrounding onlookers were instantly in an uproar. They were all filled with shock. Seeing Bufang's power grow continuously, suppressing the joint power of the other five people, they all took in a breath of cold air. Xiao Buke's pupils shrank. Impossible. How could he do that? Because even he, Xiao Buke, couldn't suppress the power of those five people. At most, he wouldn't be defeated, and that was because his knife skill was extremely special. After all, his identity was very special. Although he was the young master of the Xiao family in the second layer of the Heaven Chief realm, he had another identity, which was the source of his pride. He was the city lord of the second layer of the Heaven Chief realm, Lu Zhandue's disciple. His knife skill was inherited from Lu Zhandue, except for the city lord of the first layer. The other city lords were all Qilin chefs. Being the disciple of a Qilin chef was enough for him to be proud. This was also the reason why he was confident that he could compete with the monstrous geniuses of the fifth floor of Heaven Chief realm. Basically, the monstrous geniuses of the fifth floor were the disciples of the city lords. He must be stubborn. He can't hold on for long. Xiao Buke said seriously. Xiao Buke said seriously. At this moment, the others were already dumbstruck, including the elder sister who ranked 99. Xiao Buchuan's eyes were filled with fear. This scene reminded him of the terrible experience he had in the first layer. At that time, Bu Fong had also fought 1 against 5. In the end, he had won. Was everything going to repeat itself? In the arena, the Heaven Chi from the 5th layer had sweat trickling down his forehead, and his eyes were bloodshot. Bu Fong's knife slowly slashed down. It made him feel the pressure suddenly rise, and his entire body seemed to be shrouded in a cold aura. This knife skill, this feeling, how could it appear in the 1st layer of the Heaven Chief? He had only felt this kind of feeling from the monstrous geniuses of the 5th layer. Hold on, crush him. The 5th layer's Heaven Chief didn't believe it, roaring angrily. A moment later, his knife skill was displayed to the extreme, and the kitchen knife in his hand radiated brilliance. The misty rain painting seemed to change. The misty rain that was originally full of immortal intent turned into a storm in just a blink of an eye. The other Heaven Chief also clenched their teeth, displaying their extreme knife skills. In an instant, the atmosphere became fierce and intense. The audience below the arena held their breaths, not daring to breathe loudly. They stared at the arena seriously, until a crisp, ripping sound rang out. The phantom behind Bu Fong slashed out a knife. That knife, it was unstoppable. What the 5 immortal chefs were doing was putting up a desperate struggle. The misty rain painting was torn. Starting from the middle, it was cut into 2 halves. Boom! A loud sound rang out. Everyone saw it. It was the 5th layer's Heaven Chief. His face instantly turned deathly pale. The kitchen knife in his hand also flew out. Thousands of knife lights shrouded his arm. Puff! 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 Blood splattered. The 5th layer's Heaven Chief howled miserably. His arm was slashed by the kitchen knife, leaving countless cuts. Puff! He spurted a mouthful of blood. Kneeling on the ground, the arena's ground cracked. The 5th layer's Heaven Chief's power was completely expelled. Drip! Drip! The 5th layer's Heaven Chief knelt on the ground. He was panting hard. Blood flowed from his mouth and nose. His arm was full of cuts, from which blood gushed out. In the distance, his kitchen knife fell. The kitchen knife was dim, no longer radiating light. His pupils constricted, and he was in a trance. In his heart, it seemed that Bu Fong's knife had just slashed a crack that would never heal. He could no longer condense the heart of cooking path. His future would stop here. Puff! Puff! The other 4 Heaven Chiefs' fates weren't any better. They all spurted blood. The kitchen knives in their hands exploded. They staggered a few steps back, their faces ashen from defeat. In the arena, the 5 judges' eyes shrank. Hurry up and stop him. A judge slammed the table, glaring at the judge. The judge was startled. He hurried to take action. His body flashed, and he appeared on the arena. A kitchen knife appeared in his hand, sweeping horizontally. An invisible wave of power shot out from his body, sweeping toward Bu Fong's remaining power. The judge's pupils shrank. He staggered backward, taking a breath of cold air. This power, it was too King terrifying. He almost couldn't stop it. It should be known that he was a peak 2nd grade Heaven Chief, an existence that had half a foot into the 3rd grade Heaven Chief realm. However, facing the remaining power of the knife, he almost lost. The result was, without a doubt, Bu Fong won. The power on his body slowly dispersed. Bu Fong looked at the judge, his face emotionless. His fingers flicked, and the dragon bone kitchen knife spun in Bu Fong's hand. After twirling the knife, Bu Fong put it away. The winner is Bu Fong. The judge looked at Bu Fong, his pupils constricting as he said in a deep voice, "Boom!" In the arena, an old judge raised his hand, pounding the table, glaring at Bu Fong. Cutting people's knife power, destroying their foundation. Such a ruthless person. What qualifications does he have to participate in the Heaven Chief competition? As soon as the judge opened his mouth, the audience went into an uproar. Did this judge want to hold the great demon accountable? Did he want to disqualify the great demon from the competition? But it wasn't the great demon's fault when the 5 people joined hands to smash the great demon's knife power and leave a shadow in the great demon's heart. Why didn't this judge stand up? Xiao Buke calmed down, his face revealing a cold smile. One of those 5 people is Old Chin's disciple. The great demon is doomed this time. Everybody held their breath, looking at Bufong. They didn't know how the great demon would solve this. That was a 3rd-grade heaven chief, a famous heaven chief in the heaven chief realm. If such an existence wanted to punish the great demon wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. The other judges wanted to say something, but they were afraid of Old Chin's power, so they didn't say anything. The judge was a little aggrieved. In his heart, he felt injustice for Bufong. At this moment, the other 5 heaven chiefs' eyes had lost focus. They hadn't recovered from their failure. Bufong wiped the dragon bone kitchen knife. Green smoke twirled, and the dragon bone kitchen knife was put away. Then Bufong put both of his hands into the pockets of his vermilion robe. His face indifferent, he lifted his head, looking at Old Chun. The latter glared at Bufong, but Bufong just looked at him indifferently. Retard. Bufong's face was emotionless as he spat out these 3 words. He turned to the old man. Destroying someone's foundation? Chopping someone's knife? All of this was started by the other 5. Bufong was just fighting back. Why did this old man have to punish him? What did the great demon say? The great demon called Old Chin retard? F***CK. So domineering. He deserves to be called the great demon. So domineering. After Bufong finished speaking, the crowd quieted down. A moment later, it boiled over. That was Old Chun, one of the most powerful people in the 3rd layer of the Heaven Chief realm. The great demon wasn't afraid to call him a retard. How dare you? You're just a kid. Did you eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? Being called a retard, Old Chun was so enraged that his face was about to bleed. He, Old Chun, had never suffered such humiliation before. You, get lost. You're disqualified. Disqualified. Old Chun roared. His roar reverberated through the entire square. Old Chun, you. The referee couldn't stand it anymore. Frowning, he lifted his head to look at Old Chun. Shut up. There's no room for you to speak here. Old Chun coldly glanced at the referee. Old Chun, disqualifying a contestant isn't up to you alone. The 5 judges must vote together. The referee said. However, the referee's heart sank. He sighed. The remaining judges wouldn't dare to offend Old Chun. They would definitely decide to disqualify Bufong. What a pity. He looked at Bufong with regret. He could only help him this much. Bufong was calm. Of course, he knew the referee was helping him. He lifted his head, looking at the 5 judges in the distance. The judges looked at each other, then laughed. We all agree. Old Chun is right about such a cruel and merciless person. We all agree to disqualify this contestant. Swoosh. The entire square was in an uproar. The great demon. This time he was doomed. Old Chun sneered. The corners of Xiao Buke's mouth rose. The 5th layer's heaven chief, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly lifted his head. His face was red, and he sneered, using your status to oppress others? That's a little too much. Anyway, I forgot to tell you. Bufong indifferently looked at Old Chun and the judges. I have someone above me. As soon as Bufong's voice faded, a moment later, petals fell from the sky. The sound of a zither echoed. A small, naked child descended from the sky, fluttering his pure white wings. He hovered above the 5 judges' heads. Who's calling? Chapter 1038. Who was calling? Calling your sister. What the heck was that? Everybody was a little dumbfounded as they looked at the naked, wimpy kid floating in the air. The wimpy kid with wings flapped his wings, accompanied by heavenly music. Flower petals fluttered, giving him the air of an immortal. Of course, the premise was that he had to cover his lower body. Bufong was a little bewildered. Looking at that little fellow, his brows couldn't help but twitch. He knew that thing. It was Realm Lord Dit's little brother, ginseng fruit. Little brother, right? What is that thing? This is the venue of the Heaven Chief competition. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. Where are the guards? Old Chin looked at the wimpy kid, coldly shouting. As his voice rang out, several figures streaked across the sky and arrived. They hovered in the air, surrounding the wimpy kid. Interesting, Bufong put his hands in the pockets of his vermilion robe, indifferently watching the scene in the air. It seemed that the so-called Old Chun didn't recognize Realm Lord Dit's little brother. Bufong didn't expose him, just watching the scene in the air. Down below, everybody was dumbstruck. What was this thing that had suddenly appeared for? Was it a joke? And the great demon said that he had someone above him. Was he referring to that little thing? This kind of naked brat. They could beat 10 of them with a single hand. It turned out that the great demon also had a sense of humor. Looking at his expressionless face, he could still joke. The wimpy kid was dumbstruck. What do these guards want to do? Presumptuous. Are you blind? Have you never seen the wise and divine realm, Lord His Highness? Little Dit was so angry, shouting in the air. The group of guards surrounding Little Dit couldn't help but laugh. This thing was really a joke. They had never seen the wise and mighty realm, Lord His Highness. As the top Qilin chef in the Heaven Chief realm, how could they, the guards, meet him? However, if he had never seen the Realm Lord before, what did that have to do with a naked brat like him? Come with us. This is the venue of the Heaven Chief competition. You can't show up naked. One of the guards said. Old Chin coldly glanced at the guard. Being naked isn't the point. Hurry up and bring this little guy out. The guard's expression turned serious as he hurriedly nodded. I want to see who dares to touch this Realm Lord. Little Dit was extremely angry. His hands were on his hips, and the wings on his back were flapping. His golden hair floated in the wind. His words were very dignified. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the guards grabbed his wings and dragged him out of the plaza. Bufong was speechless. The wise and mighty realm Lord D Tai. Are you King funny? Seems like I still have to rely on myself, of course. He couldn't be disqualified. He still needed to enter the top 10 of the Heaven Chief competition to complete the system's task. He hadn't condensed the heart of cooking path yet. How could he be expelled just like that? Although he couldn't rely on the Realm Lord Dit, Bufong still had a solution. However, little Dit, whose wings were being lifted, was very angry. After struggling for a while, an invisible wave of energy burst out from his body. A moment later, little Dit's eyes turned gold. Boom, boom, boom. A wave of terrifying energy burst out in the void. One by one, the guards were blasted away by an invisible force, and their armor shattered in the void. You dare to lift your wise and mighty realm, Lord Dit. All of you, go and experience the art of nudity. Little Dit placed his hands on his hips, his lower body blooming with holy light. In the void, the guards wore a bewildered face. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets as they watched their bodies fly away uncontrollably, their armors shattering. What the F***CK, the onlookers widened their eyes and dropped their jaws. They were dumbstruck. That shining white guard in the sky. It was a little exciting. Presumptuous? What are you doing? Old Chun was enraged. An invisible wave of energy shot out from his body. A moment later, a palm slapped toward little Dit in the void. Boom! The entire void began to ripple. As Old Chun was a grade 3 heaven chief, his cultivation base was peerless. This palm strike made people shiver in fear. Many people thought that it was too much. To a little kid, Old Chun dared to kill him. Seeing Old Chun take action, Bufong knew that he was safe. That palm, which blotted out the sky and covered the sun, caused everyone to feel suffocated just like that. It was torn apart in the void. Everyone scattered. As for the little wimp, he slowly flapped his wings and flew in front of Elder Chun. His small and exquisite hand held a token, which he patted on Old Chun's face. Old man, seems like you're not afraid of death. Old Chun was bewildered. He took the token off his face. The judges also saw the token. A moment later, their eyes shrank, taking in a breath of cold air. They all stood up from their seats and bowed to little D-Tai. Old Chen's face was cloudy and shocked. He couldn't help but bow. This token represented the realm lord of the Heaven Chief realm. The token was there, and the person was there. This little kid had a relationship with the realm lord. This year's Heaven Chief competition, the wise and divine realm lord Dit is watching closely. You used your power for personal gain. Old man, do you want to die? Now, I announce that you're removed from this year's judge position. Little Dit placed his hands on his waist, speaking arrogantly. Old Chun was bewildered. However, seeing the token was like seeing the realm lord. He didn't dare to get angry. His face twitched. Eventually, he sighed. Taking back the token, Little Dit looked at the other judges. You should know what to do next. It's not right to use your power for personal gain. We have to ensure the fairness of the Heaven Chief competition. Little Dit clasped his hands, speaking calmly. His pure white wings flapped. The judges nodded and smiled, showing that they understood. Then, Little Dit flapped his wings, landing on Old Chen's seat, crossing his legs. All right, let's continue the competition. That little chef isn't bad. The judges nodded in agreement once again. Hey, little chef, are you interested in doing something big with me? Little Dit sat on his chair, calling Bu Fong. Bu Fong looked at Little Dit, the corners of his mouth twitching. Even if he didn't come with his real body, this realm lord, Dit, was a little funny. Do you want to experience the art of nudity? If you're not interested, you can discuss it with Xiao Bai. Bu Fong shook his head, the corners of his mouth twitching. Little Dit was bewildered, feeling a little regretful. Then forget it. Let's continue the competition. You're not allowed to use your power for personal gain. Little Dit said. He raised his chubby fingers, pointing at his eyes, then at the judges. The wise and mighty realm lord, His Highness, is watching you. The corners of the judges' mouths twitched. Without the realm lord's token, do you think we'll pay attention to you? Old Chun was aggrieved. He was so angry that he flicked his sleeves and left. He didn't pay attention to the disciples kneeling on the arena. All right, the competition will continue. The third part is the dish test. The judge stood up, announcing that the competition would continue. Below the arena, the onlookers were bewildered. What happened? Where did that exhibitionist kid come from? Why did he make the judges yield? Why did he let Old Chin leave? They all sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at the great demon king in the arena. The great demon didn't have an ordinary background. He could even handle Old Chun. They had thought that the great demon king was going to fall this time, but in the end, he had risen again. The great demon, he's really awesome. I have a feeling that the great demon is going to kill a monster this time. This year's Heaven Chief competition should have some changes. It's going to be interesting. The audience was so excited that they started to chatter. Xiao Buke's eyes shrank, looking at the intact Bu Fong in disbelief. He had thought that Bu Fong would be disqualified from the competition by Old Chun, but in the end, an exhibitionist brat had appeared and saved the great demon king. He's lucky, but his next opponent will be stronger. Xiao Buke gritted his teeth, saying coldly. Bu Fong had begun to put pressure on him. However, he wasn't afraid. His opponents were the top geniuses of the 5th layer, not a little chef from the 1st layer. In the arena, Bu Fong shrugged. Now, let's start the third part of the competition to determine the final ranking, Rumble. As soon as the referee's voice faded, the black stone tablet in the sky changed again. Once again, Bu Fong's name appeared in the first place. The Heaven Chief from the 5th layer had his knife power broken, so his ranking was a few places lower. Punching the ground, the Heaven Chief from the 5th layer stood up, his eyes fierce as he gazed at Bu Fong. In cooking, I won't lose to you, the Heaven Chief said coldly. He took out a bandage, tying up his arm, which had many cuts on it. He walked to his seat and summoned the stove that was surrounded by dense, immortal energy. The other Heaven Chief also took their places. The third and most important cooking competition had finally begun. Once again, the competition went back on track. Old Chen's incident seemed to be just a small interlude. Bu Fong clasped his hands, standing at his spot, indifferently looking at the heaven chief from the fifth layer. I forgot to tell you, if you want to compete with me, there's a professional term. It's called Chef's Challenge, Bu Fong said. A moment later, the sky rumbled. Little Dit, who was nibbling on a spirit fruit, lifted his head, looking at the void in surprise. The will of the great path? Did that thing get a cramp? Meanwhile, outside the arena, the heaven chief from the 10th group was shocked by Bu Fong's words. Chef Challenge. My God, could it be that the great demon king wants to? F***CK. The great demon is back. The despairing great demon king is going berserk again. The heaven chief from the 10th group recalled the fear of being dominated, their faces filled with sympathy as they looked at the other heaven chief in the arena. Xiao Buchuan was frightened. Chef Challenge. He's starting again. Xiao Buke furrowed his brows. He had heard about Bu Fong's Chef's Challenge. Now he wanted to see what it was. Swish ingredients piled up on the stove. One by one, the immortal chefs began to cook intensely. The heaven chief from the 5th layer gazed at Bu Fong. At this moment, Bu Fong was his only opponent. If he could defeat him, he would have a chance to mend the crack in his heart. Otherwise, he would be stuck here for the rest of his life, unable to condense the heart of cooking path. Knife light flashed, showing all kinds of cooking skills. At this moment, it felt like a cooking competition. Rumble. Soon, dark clouds began to gather in the sky again. Lightning flashed and roared above everyone's head. The black turtle constellation walk spun, and an aroma diffused. This time, Bu Fong didn't cook the oyster pancake he had cooked in the preliminaries. Although the oyster pancake wasn't bad, Bu Fong had chosen to do a chef's challenge. Moreover, his opponent wasn't the heaven chief from the preliminaries. Thus, this time, Bu Fong chose to cook the invincible spicy strip. As soon as the spicy strip appeared, who could compete with it? The spicy aroma diffused. Bu Fong held his chopsticks, taking out a scarlet spicy strip from the black turtle constellation wok. The spicy gravy dripped from the spicy strip. Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at Bu Fong's dish. That thing, could it be considered 8F* king dish? Little Dit took a bite of his spirit fruit. When he saw the spicy strip Bu Fong had taken out, he instantly spat it out. He knew that thing. Wasn't it the thing that the clown Pluto always had in his mouth? Rumble. In the sky, the thunder dragons thundered. Everybody was dumbfounded. That thing was really a dish. The corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched. These people didn't know how terrifying the spicy strip was. It was a spicy strip made with the enhanced abyssal chili sauce, but Bu Fong wanted to use it to fight against 49 opponents. Rumble. In the sky, the thunder boomed. A moment later, under everybody's shocked eyes, 50 thunder dragons struck at the same time. Chapter 1039. Rumble. The thunder dragons roared and fell, tearing the sky as if they were going to shatter the void. This was a most shocking scene in the semi-finals, and everyone was waiting for it. 50 immortal chefs cooked immortal dishes at the same time to resist their lightning punishments. This scene was incomparably shocking, and it made everyone's hearts surge with emotions. Thunder boomed unceasingly. In the arena, each of the Heaven Chief displayed their lightning protection skills. To be able to become a Heaven Chief of this level, they naturally had their own skills. After all, they had cooked many immortal dishes, and lightning protection was their foundation. Below the arena, the Heaven Chief, who belonged to the 10th group, had a strange look on his face. Lightning protection was probably not needed anymore. As expected, it was as they had expected. The 50 lightning punishments that fell from the sky had a change that made people gawk and drop their jaws. Rumble. The thunder dragons bared their fangs and brandished their claws, pouncing on the thunder dragon above Bu Fong's head. The enraged roar that erupted in an instant caused everyone to be taken aback. The judges in the arena all sucked in breaths of cold air. The judge's body trembled, and he almost couldn't help but stop them. However, he didn't dare to stop so many thunder dragons. Little Dit sat in his chair, watching the scene. His little eyes sparkled as if he was projecting the scene somewhere. The thunder dragons are biting each other. Interesting. Is it because of the will of the great path? In the arena, the Heaven Chief were dumbfounded. Were there thunder dragons? They were all prepared for the tribulation, but the lightning punishments disappeared. Was he teasing them? Why did the thunder dragons go to that guy's side? The eyes of the fifth layer's Heaven Chief shrank. He suddenly had a bad feeling. He's courting death. How can he resist 49 thunder dragons? Boom. As expected, the thunder dragon above Bu Fong's head couldn't endure the bombardment of the 50 thunder dragons. However, it was still being offset. Soon, the lightning dragons vanished in the void. In the arena, many of Heaven Chief's dishes began to crumble. Their bowls cracked, and the immortal energy dissipated. Each of the Heaven Chief's pupils constricted, and they sucked in a breath of cold air as their bodies trembled. Below the arena, as expected, familiar graphics, familiar controls. I feel sorry for the contestants in the arena for 1 second. This is true despair. Chef's Challenge. This is the true terror of the Great Demon. The Great Demon is really the shit stirrer of this year's Heaven Chief competition. The onlookers sighed and looked at Bu Fong with complicated eyes. At this moment, Bu Fong did not care about the lightning punishment in the sky. All of his mental energy was concentrated on the chili strip. Voila! The sauce on the spicy strip flowed down. A sweet, spicy smell filled the air. The chili strip was emitting a radiance. It was red and translucent, and there seemed to be energy flowing within it. While the surface of the chili strip was glowing, immortal energy spiraled. Without a doubt, this was an immortal dish. However, compared to the previous chili strip, it seemed to be more delicious, and it contained a deeper meaning. The improved abyssal chili sauce tasted perfect. It was more than 1 grade higher than the previous one. A dish of this grade was enough to make people sink in it. Bu Fong took out a round plate. The round plate was filled with ice cubes. Cold energy diffused from the ice cubes, and white, chili air rolled. Bu Fong stabbed the chili strip into the ice cubes. Instantly, immortal energy swirled around it like a divine weapon. He used the dragon bone kitchen knife to cut the spirit vegetables, then placed them on the plate. Then, the entire dish was completed, looking like an exquisite work of art. In the sky, the rumbling sounds reverberated unceasingly. Only then did Bu Fong raise his head, looking at the dazzling lightning in the sky. Bu Fong's first thunder dragon couldn't bear the bite of so many thunder dragons, and it shattered. However, it had neutralized half of the thunder dragons. The dark clouds in the sky gathered one more time. The second thunder dragon dashed out, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It tore the sky apart. The second lightning punishment. Not bad, but it's still not enough. Xiao Buke's eyes shrank when he saw that. He took a deep breath and said, "Of course, the power of the second lightning punishment was stronger than the first." Soon, almost all the remaining thunder dragons were neutralized. Only 1 thunder dragon was left in the arena. You're not the only one who can make a dish that can trigger the second lightning punishment. The Heaven Chief in the 5th layer said coldly. It was still the same 5 people. Their cooking skills were really good. After the first thunder dragon was torn apart, the lightning punishment was condensed again. The second thunder dragon dashed out. In the blink of an eye, the 5 double-layered thunder dragons swooped toward Bu Fong's double-layered thunder dragon. Killing broke out in the void one more time. Although they didn't know why the thunder dragons were killing each other. However, this kind of direct combat made them very excited. It was really shocking. Rumble. It's not easy for the Great Demon to win this time. Although his dish triggered the second lightning tribulation, none of the people here are weaklings. There are also people who can trigger the second lightning tribulation. The Great Demon is going to lose. Why do I feel so excited? The onlookers under the arena were very excited, especially the Heaven Chief from the 10th group. They were terrified by the Great Demon, and now they could finally see the Great Demon being suppressed. Of course, they were excited. Rumble, rumble. The collision broke out instantly. Even the judge sucked in a breath of cold air. Even he didn't dare to face this kind of collision head-on. Little D, Tai, crossed his legs and continued to eat the spirit fruits. He was interested in watching the thunderbolts and explosions. Bufong, that kid is going to lose. Little Dit said. The other judges hurried to agree. Yeah, although they're all second lightning punishments, it's still hard for him to fight 5 alone. This kid is too arrogant. The judges said. Little Dit rolled his eyes. Did I allow you to talk? Can I, the Realm Lord, see? The other judges were enraged. If it weren't for the Realm Lord's token, they would have beaten that kid to death. Rumble. Indeed, after a series of explosions, Bufong's second lightning punishment was torn apart. The remaining 5 lightning dragons hovered in the sky. Ha ha, you're going to lose. In terms of cooking, I'm enough to crush you. The eyes of the 5th group's heaven chief beamed with excitement. The other immortal chefs also laughed loudly. The fear of being dominated by Bufong disappeared instantly. The psychological shadow caused by Bufong's slash also faded a little. However, Bufong didn't care about them at all. He just clasped his hands, staring at the exquisite plate of spicy strips in front of him. The radiance emitted by the chili strip became even more intense, and a mellow, rich, and sweet aroma pervaded the air, causing Bufong's mouth to involuntarily salivate. Boom! Thunder boomed. The laughter of the 5th group's heaven chief came to an abrupt halt. Then, everyone revealed a look of shock. They lifted their heads, looking at the top of Bufong's head. There, the black clouds had yet to disperse. A terrifying pressure burst forth from within. In the next moment, a vivid and lifelike lightning dragon emerged from the hole. The 3rd lightning punishment. The great Demon King's dish actually triggered 3 lightning tribulations. Everybody felt their world view collapse at this moment. How could it be 3 lightning punishments? The dish cooked by the great demon. Wasn't it just a F** King stick? A stick that could attract 3 lightning punishments. This was F** King subversive. Gong Shuban was so excited. A glimmer of hope at the darkest hour. Honorbu was full of miracles. He had seen dishes that triggered 3 lightning punishments many times. Feel despair. Gong Shuban's heart was filled with anticipation. Rumble, rumble. Indeed, when the 3rd Thunder Dragon appeared, the Heaven Chief in the arena was desperate. The 5th group's Heaven Chief was completely dumbfounded, seeing his own Lightning Dragon crumble under the might of the 3rd Lightning Dragon. The tear in his heart seemed to grow even larger. The shadow in his heart became even bigger. This was real despair. Boom! The 5 Thunder Dragons collapsed, and the black clouds scattered. Only Bufong's Thunder Dragon was left. It continued to descend. A figure shot out at high speed. Its metal wings spread open, and its sticks smashed toward the Thunder Dragon. They collided. Eventually, it guided the Thunder Dragons into its stomach. The great demon's Earth Immortal Puppet had taken action. That cool, lightning-eating technique had completely stunned people. Just like the great demon, this Earth Immortal Puppet was fresh, refined, and not pretentious at all. Boom, boom. The 5 Heaven Chiefs' dishes shattered one after another. The Thunder Dragon disappeared. Bufong indifferently held the dish that looked like a work of art. You guys, do you feel despair? Bufong indifferently glanced at the stunned Heaven Chief's eyes. Bufong wanted to be low-key, but there were always people who made him have no choice but to be high-profile. Old Chin's matter made Bufong's heart choke with anger. I actually lost. The 5th group's Heaven Chief stared blankly at his dish shattering. His immortal energy dissipated, and his eyes were filled with despair. The others also had the same expression. His knife skill was defeated, and his dish was also defeated. He was utterly defeated, utterly defeated. Don't worry, there's something that will make you feel even more despair. Bufong said casually. The 10 groups of immortal chefs outside the arena sucked in a breath of cold air, their faces filled with sympathy as they looked at the 49 immortal chefs in the arena. The greatest sorrow in life was to meet the great demon. Xiao Buchuan's body shook violently. He was scared. What are you afraid of? Xiao Bu glanced at Xiao Buchuan and shouted coldly. No, brother, you don't know how terrifying that guy is. Xiao Buchuan's face was full of fear. Thinking about what would happen next, his mind shivered. What? Xiao Bu was bewildered. Then, he turned to look at the arena. At first glance, his heart seemed to be squeezed by an invisible hand. That scene? He would never forget it. A magic array emerged under Bufang's feet. The crystal knife cabinet emerged. Bufang expressionlessly reached out his hand, patting the cabinet. Instantly, the cabinet opened. In the arena, the Heaven Chief watched in despair as his kitchen knife soared into the sky, turning into a torrent, sweeping toward Bufang's cabinet. No, the fifth group's Heaven Chief reached out his hand in despair. He couldn't lose his kitchen knife. However, just as he was about to grab the kitchen knife, there was a sudden clap of thunder in the sky. The terrifying will of the heavenly path descended, causing their bodies to stiffen on the spot. Swish! The kitchen knives seemed to turn into a torrent, hovering around Bufang's body. Then, they entered the cabinet. Bufang's palm slowly brushed the cabinet. Indifferently, he looked at those people. I wanted to keep a low profile. I didn't want to have a chef's challenge. Unfortunately, you forced me, Bufang said. Little Dit gawked, dropping his jaw. His spirit fruits fell to the ground. He couldn't believe it. A moment later, he excitedly patted the table. Chef's challenge. This is a chef's challenge. It's so interesting. These lazy little fellows, who don't have the slightest sense of urgency, should experience this chef's challenge. It's the best way to promote their progress. Little Dit's eyes sparkled when he saw the chef's challenge. The young people in the Heaven Chief realm had the best resources, but they didn't want to improve. Their cooking skills were getting worse with each generation. If they could popularize the chef's challenge, there would be more and more top Heaven Chief realm. No wonder the will of the Great Path recognized the chef's challenge. This chef's challenge could happen. In the arena, Bufang gently patted the cabinet. The thousands of kitchen knives in the cabinet glowed, sinking into the magic array. He put away the cabinet. Bufang's eyes fell on the spicy strip on the stove. Now, he could finally taste the spicy strip. Chapter 1040. Finally, he could taste the spicy strip. This was a brand new spicy strip made with a brand new recipe. It was a refreshing, refined, and unpretentious spicy strip. Although the recipe was different, the taste was still the same. At least, when Bufang faced this spicy strip, his entire being was immersed in it. The taste of the enhanced abyssal chili sauce made Bufang feel a little intoxicated. That kind of tantalizing, spicy flavor seemed to penetrate deep into his bones. Bufang looked at the spicy strip stuck in the ice on the porcelain plate. It was red and translucent, with immortal energy swirling around it. Moreover, it exuded a different kind of charm. Just looking at it was enough to make people immersed in it. It was an indescribable beauty. Thus, Bufang chose to eat it. Bufang had made thousands of spicy strips, but now he only had this one in his heart. Outside the arena, the onlookers were already stunned. The fifth layer's Heaven Chief had failed once again. Moreover, he was ruthlessly crushed by the Great Demon in a cooking competition. The Great Demon was really the Great Demon. He fought against 49 opponents alone, and he still won. He actually triggered 3 lightning punishments. That was 3 lightning punishments. Among the immortal chef, only the top Heaven Chief of the 5th layer could do that. The Great Demon King was unexpectedly able to cook a dish with 3 lightning tribulations. He was indeed the shit-stirrer of this year's Heaven Chief competition. He stirred up waves in the entire Heaven Chief competition. The appearance of the chef's challenge, the eruption of invincible power. How many more miracles could this great demon create? The audience was puzzled, but at the same time, they were looking forward to it. At this moment, following Bufang's gaze, everyone's mind involuntarily focused on that spicy strip. It was a strange dish. Everyone present was a heaven chief, so they naturally had their own judgment. Perhaps it could be called a dessert. That's right. It was more appropriate to call it a dessert. However, a dessert could trigger 3 lightning punishments. Moreover, he had fought against 49 immortal chefs alone, crushing all of them. One of them was the genius heaven chief from the 5th level. This little bit of effort was probably enough to ascend to the heavens. 49 immortal chefs were King defeated by a stick-like dish. Everyone wanted to laugh, but they couldn't. A product of the great demon could indeed create miracles. Little Dit was also a little curious about Bu Fong's dishes. Flapping its wings, it flew toward Bu Fong. From the looks of it, he seemed to want to taste Bu Fong's dishes. However, Bu Fong didn't give him any chance. With a shake of his hand, Bu Fong pulled out the chili strip from the pile of ice and stuffed it into his mouth. The spicy strip entered his mouth. The first thing that came out was a sweet aroma. This was the sweet aroma of the enhanced abyssal chili sauce, a taste that seemed to permeate into one's bones. Bu Fong felt his entire body go limp. Holding the chili strip in his mouth, the taste of the chili strip flowed through his saliva and spread in his mouth, making Bu Fong quiver. Moreover, when the immortal energy gushed into his mouth, Bu Fong felt as if he had been thoroughly baptized. His entire spirit seemed to be sublimated. Without a doubt, this chili strip had an indescribable effect. From Bu Fong's experience, this chili strip seemed to be able to make his mental energy stronger and more condensed. Little Dit flapped his wings and landed. Looking at the chili strip that was taken away, he was a little angry. "You're a contestant. How could you eat the dish?" "The dish is for the judges to taste." Little Dit placed his hands on his hips, floating in front of Bu Fong. His lower body bloomed with a dazzling radiance, which was dazzling and eye-catching. His small eyes stared at Bu Fong, his mouth pouting, which made him look really cute. With the chili strip in his mouth, Bu Fong remembered that the little fellow in front of him was a flasher who liked to take off his clothes and run around. Instantly, Bu Fong felt that Little Dit's appearance was somewhat ferocious. Facing Little Dit's question, the corners of Bu Fong's mouth twitched, but he was too lazy to answer. He held the chili strip in his hand, sucking it in and out of his mouth. He had to admit that Hades' heir's way of eating the chili strip did make some sense. At least, he could thoroughly taste the delicious taste of the chili strip. Watching Bu Fong eat with relish, Little Dit couldn't stand it anymore. With red eyes, he stared at Bu Fong. However, Bu Fong ignored his gaze. He pointed at the group of people in the arena, then at the black stone tablet in the sky. "I don't think there's any suspense in my dish. I don't need to taste and evaluate it," Bu Fong said. That was because all of his opponents had collapsed. Outside the arena, the onlookers were already used to this scene. Being the referee for the great demon, I'm afraid there will be a shadow in his heart. I feel sorry for the referee for a second. Meeting a contestant like the great demon, there will be a lot of trouble, and in the end, he will never be able to eat his dish from the preliminary until now. It seems that the referee has never tasted the great demon's dish. The onlookers were talking about it. They seem to have seen through something. In the distance, the referee smiled bitterly. In this cooking competition, Bu Fong crushed everyone. No one else was able to become a dish. Only Bu Fong became a dish. The final winner was Bu Fong, because there was only one dish. So, the final result was known without tasting it. The person with the highest ranking was, without a doubt, Bu Fong. This ranking competition was indeed somewhat out of everyone's expectations. Little Dit couldn't eat the spicy strip. He was so angry that he wanted to fight with Bu Fong. However, Bu Fong held the spicy strip in his mouth. He flicked his finger on Little Dit's head, sending him flying away. The first match of the ranking competition was over. However, the ranking match wouldn't end so quickly. There were still other contestants who had to compete in the arena. In the end, the basic ranking would be determined according to the common data. After the semifinals, there were 500 contestants left. The 500 contestants would have to compete in the ranking match. There would be 50 people in a group, so there would be 10 groups. Thus, after 10 groups, the final ranking would be determined. This ranking was based on the performance of each contestant. When Bufong was competing, the ranking match had already gone through 3 groups. Now, there were only 6 groups left. Bufong didn't linger in the arena. Putting away his cooking utensils, he shoved his hands into the pockets of his vermilion robe, then left the arena. When Bufong got off the arena, the surrounding people looked at Bufong with fear and admiration. At this moment, Gong Shuban was so excited that he didn't know what to say. Bufong's performance was beyond his estimation. With this kind of performance, if nothing unexpected happened, he could enter the top 100. Top 100. The Heaven Chief of the first layer had worked hard for so many years, but his best result was just around 100. Did Bufong break the record in the semifinals? If Bufong continued to win in the following matches, wouldn't he create an even more exciting miracle? Little Dit really wanted to find Bufong to settle accounts, but he couldn't find any flaw in Bufong's excuse, thus, he could only sulk. However, in the next ranking match, he replaced Old Chin's position, gaining the qualification to taste the dishes. Instantly, he smiled happily. Bufong stood by Gong Shuban. This kid was so excited that he couldn't find the north. All of a sudden, Bufong felt a sharp and blazing gaze on him. He couldn't help but turn his head to look. Bufong frowned. The owner of that gaze was a mysterious Heaven Chief in a black cloak. If Bufong wasn't wrong, the mysterious Heaven Chief in a black cloak was the one who had eliminated Gong Shuban. The black-cloaked Heaven Chief that Gong Shuban didn't even dare to hold his knife. This gaze, the sharp and hot gaze of the black-cloaked Heaven Chief, made Bufong feel strange and suspicious. It seemed familiar. The black-cloaked man looked at Bufong for a long time. Leaving a strange laughter, he turned around and left. Soon, he disappeared from Bufong's sight. However, this black-cloaked man had left an impression in Bufong's heart. If Bufong did not remember wrongly, this black-cloaked man should have grasped the heart of Cooking Path. Otherwise, it was impossible that Gong Shuban couldn't even hold his knife. To that extent, even Bufong couldn't do it. Bufong couldn't think of any method that could make Gong Shuban lose the courage to hold his knife. Knife power? Impossible. Knife power would only appear after using the knife skill. Basically, it was impossible to make Gong Shuban unable to hold his knife. Then, the remaining explanation was that the black-cloaked man relied on the heart of Cooking Path. Regarding the heart of Cooking Path, Bufong's curiosity was extremely strong. Because of the system's task, he needed to condense the heart of Cooking Path in the competition. And today, he finally came in contact with this high level. Looking at the back of the black-cloaked man as he left, Bufong felt that the next time he met him, he might need to ask him for advice. The rest of the qualifying matches weren't as intense as the one with Bufong. However, the competition was still fierce and explosive. Of course, compared to Bufong's match, it wasn't as fun. It was much more dull. In the next period of time, finally, the qualifying matches were over. At the end of the last qualifying match, all the contestants gathered, their faces solemn as they lifted their heads, gazing at the black stone tablet in the sky. That stone tablet was the tool to record their rankings. Little Dit was surrounded by a group of judges. Flapping his wings, he placed his hands on his waist as he announced the end of the qualifying matches. Buzz, a wave of energy rippled out. Everyone was excited and fearful, lifting their heads to look at the stone tablet. They wanted to know their ranking. Xiao Bu took a deep breath. He looked at Bufong, his eyes extremely solemn. He knew that Bufong's ranking this time wouldn't be too bad. On the stone tablet, golden light sparkled. A series of densely packed names immediately appeared on the stone tablet. Everyone's eyes were glued to the stone tablet. They were all searching for their ranking. The stone tablet recorded the top 500. Hence, the name below, 500, couldn't be listed. Gong Shuban couldn't be listed, which was a regret in his heart. However, at this moment, he didn't feel too regretful. Quite the contrary, he was so excited to help Bufong find his ranking. His heart was filled with anticipation. 200, 100, 180, 160. Not even. Gongshu Ban's eyes bloomed with radiance. A moment later, his eyes focused as he found Bu Fong's name on the stone tablet. However, when his eyes moved and saw the ranking, Gongshu Ban was completely dumbstruck. His mouth dropped as if he could stuff an egg inside. His eyes widened as if he couldn't believe it. Th. 80. My eyes aren't deceiving me, right? Gongshu Ban was dumbstruck. He swallowed his saliva as he couldn't believe it. Owner Bu had entered the Heaven Chief competition's 100th place. Did he just break the record so easily? Gongshu Ban felt the corners of his eyes moisten. Why did he have the urge to cry? How many years had it been since the first layer had this kind of result? If the first layer's Heaven Chief knew this news, he would be so excited. At this moment, the others were also in an uproar. Bu Fong's ranking had surprised everybody. They didn't expect that the Great Demon's ranking would be so high. It should be known that the Heaven Chief competition's ranking included the monstrous geniuses of the 5th layer. There were at least dozens of geniuses in the 5th layer, and the top 60 were basically all taken. Thus, the remaining 50 places were the highlight of the fierce competition. The Great Demon was ranked 86th. It was unbelievable. This meant that Bu Fong was at least one of the top rankers in this ranking competition. This Great Demon really exploded. Gongshu Ban was so happy. He couldn't wait to send this news back to the first layer of the Heaven Chief competition. At the same time, Heaven Chief competition's first layer, Immortal City, City Lord Mansion sitting in the main hall of the City Lord Mansion, Tong Wudi, who was deep in thought, suddenly felt something. Frowning, he suspiciously looked in the direction of the City Lord Mansion, where the teleportation array was located. A moment later, Tong Wudi's eyes shrank. He seemed to remember something. Energy burst out from his body as he dashed towards the teleportation array. A terrifying wave of energy burst out from the teleportation array. The energy that almost suffocated Tong Wudi made his dashing body freeze. Inside the array, 4 silhouettes slowly appeared. As soon as the 4 of them appeared, the void seemed to shake violently, as if it was about to set off huge waves. The light dispersed, revealing the 4 figures. When Tong Wudi saw the 4 of them, his mind shivered. Instantly, he respectfully bowed. Welcome, for City Lords. Facing the respectful Tong Wudi, the 4 people's eyes were incomparably calm. The leader just glanced at Tong Wudi, then faintly said, "That dog. Where is it?" Chapter 1041. That dog. Where is it? The leader was a stern, middle-aged man. His gaze was indifferent as he looked at Tong Wudi. It was just a look, but it made Tong Wudi feel incomparable pressure. There were 3 men and 1 woman. The woman was beautiful, but it wasn't the kind of beauty that came with heavy makeup. It was a kind of orchid that quietly bloomed. These 4 were the remaining city lords of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th layer of the immortal city of the Heaven Chief realm. It was Tong Wudi's first time seeing these city lords, so he was a little nervous. Originally, the 5 city lords of the immortal city were all Qilin chefs. When the 5 of them joined forces, they could even fight against the realm lord. However, with the unexpected fall of the first city lord, the whole situation was broken. Tong Wudi was very clear that although he was the city lord of the first layer, compared to these city lords, he wasn't qualified. Whether it was in terms of culinary skills or cultivation, there was more than one level between them. He was about the same as Mu Yang. That dog is in a small restaurant in the immortal city. I am the city lord of the first layer of the immortal city. Tong Wudi. Tong Wudi said respectfully to the 4 city lords. The respectful expression on his face didn't seem fake. The middle-aged man in the lead gave Tong Wudi an indifferent look. Tong Wudi, no matter who you are, if the information you say is false, you know the consequences. The middle-aged man was indifferent. Tong Wudi wasn't worthy of his attention. A mere city lord who hadn't been recognized by the realm lord. Why would he put him in his eyes? This time, because of the news of that dog, the 4 city lords of the immortal city all came to the first layer. This kind of commotion was really big. They didn't care about the advice of the realm lord's representative, Yaya, and insisted on dealing with that dog. They were also under a lot of pressure. Yes, yes, yes. This is related to the safety of the Heaven Chief realm. As the city lord of the immortal city, I naturally don't dare to be negligent. Tong Woody said. In the next instant, he took the lead and walked forward. He brought the four of them out of the teleportation array. Puffed. City Lord Feng, this Tong Woody is really interesting. He keeps talking about the immortal city's city lord. An enchanting young man pinched his thumb and middle finger and covered his mouth as he laughed. The others also smiled. He's just a clown. Our goal this time is that dog. The middle-aged man called City Lord Feng wore a solemn face. So many years have passed. I don't know how that dog's injuries have recovered. With the strength of the four of us, I'm afraid it'll be a bit difficult, a white-robed youth said indifferently. City Lord Liu, you don't need to worry. Our City Lord Feng, ever since he was humiliated by that dog, he became the master of dog meat and killed thousands of dogs in the world. Now, there's not a single dog spirit beast in the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. Even the close relatives of dogs, the wolves, are almost extinct in the 5th floor of Heaven Chief Realm. The man with his thumb and middle finger said with a smile, City Lord Feng's dog-killing knife technique is the best in the world. Why do I feel like you're mocking me? City Lord Feng said coldly, Don't talk anymore. Let's go there. Don't let that dog get the news and run away. The orchid-like woman couldn't help but open her mouth. She interrupted their quarrel. Tong Woody smacked his tongue. These 4 city lords of Immortal City weren't as cold and aloof as he had imagined. One was cold and aloof, one was arrogant, one was a sissy, and one was a virtuous lady. It was really interesting. Our little sister Mengqi is sensible. The man with his thumb and middle finger covered his mouth as he laughed. As they walked out of the city lord's mansion, Tong Woody sped up. Although the 4 people behind him were playing and joking, the pressure they gave him was really big. Under this pressure, his body shivered unceasingly. The real experts at the city lord level made him feel the so-called power. He had always been looking forward to it. He wanted to unite the 4 city lords and expel that dog from the Heaven Chief realm. And now, it seemed it would happen soon. As long as he didn't have that dog, that small restaurant would be razed to the ground in just a blink of an eye. That Bu Feng, who had a deep grudge against the Tong family, must be punished severely. It's the head of the Tong family, Tong Woody. Wrong. From now on, we should call him City Lord Tong. The Tong family is really cunning. The entire Mu family was uprooted in just one night. It's too scary. When the people around saw Tong Woody, they couldn't help but whisper. Everybody knew about the incident in the City Lord's mansion. Although it didn't cause a big commotion, the Mu family's immortal flame had been burning for 3 days. That kind of grand scene had attracted many people's attention. At this moment, people were curious about what Tong Woody was going to do in such a hurry. The 4 people behind Tong Woody also made people keep quiet out of fear. It seems City Lord Tong has done something unusual. The man with his thumb and middle finger laughed. The man who pinched his thumb and middle finger said with a smile. This guy had a lot to say, and there was no end to his words. Of course, Tong Woody didn't dare to ignore him like City Lord Feng. He hurried to welcome him with a smile. Lords, what are you talking about? I've just become a new city lord, so I can't convince the public yet. Tong Woody said. Then his eyes brightened. He pointed at the small restaurant in the distance. It's here. That dog is in there. Tong Woody said in a low voice. As soon as Tong Woody's voice faded, the 4 city lords behind him swept away their previous lazy attitudes, and their eyes suddenly shot out a bright light. City Lord Feng had a cold face. A kitchen knife appeared in his hand. That kitchen knife looked exaggerated, but its murderous aura made everything within 10 miles feel as cold as ice. The quiet, orchid-like woman wore a chef robe that was as thin as a cicada's wings. Her elegant robe fluttered, and thick, immortal energy diffused. The handsome young man in the white robe shook his hand, and a black iron bowl appeared in his hand. There were mysterious patterns carved on the surface of the bowl. The last one was the man with his thumb and middle finger. He was holding a big wok, which didn't match his style at all. The four city lords were vigilant, which made Tong Woody feel pressured. Squeak, under the vigilant eyes of the four, the door of the restaurant called Heaven Chief Restaurant slowly opened. The squeaking sound that seemed to come from ancient times resounded in people's ears. A moment later, the eyes of the four city lords shrank. A fat dog slowly walked out of the restaurant with graceful, cat-like steps. Walking to the door, the fat dog lifted its head to look at the five people. "Finally, you guys are here. Since the exhibitionist has been here, you guys should be here soon." Lord Go's magnetic and gentle voice echoed in the air. A moment later, his voice faded. Lord Go raised his exquisite dog paw at the five of them. Including Tong Woody, the pupils of the five people shrank. The semifinals were over. Bufong was ranked at the top of this year's competition with the 80th place. This title wasn't bad. At least to Gongshu Ban, it was a rank that made him cry tears of joy. Bufong had created a record in the first layer of the Heaven Chief world. It made the Heaven Chief of the Heaven Chief world, who was in the first layer, heave a sigh of relief. Since the semifinals were held in the third layer of the Heaven Chief world, it would take a long time for the news to reach the first layer. However, Gongshu Ban believed that all the Heaven Chief would be so excited when they got the news. Compared to Gongshu Ban's excitement, Bufong was very calm. To him, this rank was far from enough. The system's task was to enter the top 10 of the Heaven Chief World competition. Only then would he have the chance to collect the last fragment of the God of Cooking set. Exchanged for the God of Cooking set. He didn't care about the crazy Gongshu Ban. Bufong pulled Cece's small hand. Xiaobai followed behind Bufong, walking toward the teleportation array. After the semifinals, they needed to go to the fourth layer of the Heaven Chief world for the promotion match. The requirements of the promotion match were stricter than the semifinals. It required the top 200 contestants of the Heaven Chief World competition to participate. From these 200 contestants, 50 would be selected to enter the fifth layer of the Heaven Chief World to compete in the final competition. The competition in the fifth layer was the fiercest, because reaching the fifth layer meant that one could compete with the real monstrous geniuses. In fact, in the fourth layer, Bufong's group would have the chance to meet the top monstrous geniuses of the fifth layer. Although the top 10 contestants wouldn't participate, starting from the 11th place, they would participate in the promotion match. There was only one rank difference between the 11th and the 10th. However, it was the difference between the young generation of the Heaven Chief World Kings and Challengers. Gongshu Ban didn't choose to return to the first layer. Instead, he followed Bufong's footsteps, entering the fourth layer. He favored Bufong a lot. He thought that Bufong had a chance to enter the top 50. It was something he didn't even dare to think about. Stepping into the teleportation array, there weren't many people in the array. After all, one day had passed since the semifinals. Today, most of the contestants had entered the fourth layer. Bufong was considered slow. However, there were still people in the array. Moreover, they were all Bufong's acquaintances. They were Xiao Buke and the 99 elder sisters, whom Bufong had met when he was strolling around. When Xiao Buke and the others saw Bufong, the atmosphere became a little awkward. However, Bufong's eyes didn't fall on them. Instead, his gaze fell on a figure wrapped in a black cloak who was standing quietly in the corner. Behind that black-cloaked man, there was an even bigger black-cloaked man. Similarly, people couldn't see his appearance clearly. However, Bufong always felt that these two people were somewhat familiar. From the moment Bufong stepped into the array, there were faintly discernible gazes locking on him. Bufong stared at the two black-cloaked men, but the latter didn't look at him. The atmosphere was really awkward. However, the teleportation array was fast. In less than half a cup of tea's time, they had reached the fourth layer, the most luxurious layer of the Heaven Chief world. As soon as they arrived at the fourth layer, Bufong seemed to be a little absent-minded. The towering buildings that pierced through the clouds, the palaces that were built on the mountain peaks as far as the eye could see, everything looked so luxurious and grand. Bumpkin, do you feel that everything is so strange? Something that has never seen the world, the 99 elder sister seemed to feel Bufong's surprise. She felt that she could finally hold her head high, so she ridiculed him for a while. The city lord of the fourth layer of the Heaven Chief world, City Lord Ming-Chi, is the only female among the 5-layer masters. She built the most luxurious layer, the immortal city of the fourth layer, which is the city that all the Heaven Chief yearns for. The 99 elder sister said. She seemed to feel that she could finally save some face. Creak. The light of the ceiling array disappeared. The 2 black-cloaked men instantly walked out. All of a sudden, the tall black-cloaked man stopped in his tracks. His gaze seemed to fall on Bufong. "Stupid cow, why are you in a daze? Let's go." In the distance, the hoarse voice of the black-cloaked man resounded. Those words made Bufong frown even more. He seemed to have seen these 2 people somewhere before. The sense of familiarity was too strong. However, Bufong didn't think too much about it, because the 2 people quickly disappeared. The 99 elder sister was still showing off her knowledge. Obviously, she held this city in high esteem. That was natural. After all, it was the only immortal city with a female city lord. Naturally, the female Heaven Chief would admire it. Standing on the 4th layer, Bufong raised his head. He could already see the dense fruits on the Heaven Tree, which were already surrounded by immortal energy. There was even a strange, intense surging on them. Bufong had a feeling that he was getting closer to the so-called space of the Heaven Tree. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.